the Yuden domain. A man is in royal attire. A land under the rule of Count Sergio. Of all the territories in the kingdom, those in the southern region had the most resources. A region where there are many trees and sand dunes. Hands filled with gold coins and countless precious gems shining brightly. And Yuden was the most powerful of all domains in the south. Simply put, it controlled the entire economy of the southern territories. And chosen to be the heiress of the household, ruling over this domain. It is nighttime, and there is a house. Have a seat, Rox. Was the Count's eldest daughter already Adelaide Sergio? She is sitting in a turquoise-colored dress, and a cup of tea is in her hand. That was a longer trip than I expected. Adelaide Sergio is sitting on a sofa, holding a cup of tea in her hand. In front of her, on the sofa, sits a Rox. She says, "I thought you would be back by yesterday since you left Leechin last week." He says, "Oh, it's because I had to make a stop along the way." He had a red-colored sample with him. She asks, "How did it go? Did you find anything worth trading?" He unrolled the sample and said, "I found some beautiful fabric. Would you like to see? I brought some samples back." She replies, Sure, I'll take a look after." He said, "Is something the matter, Adele?" She said while smiling, "What do you mean?" He said, "Oh, it's just that I have never seen you put off work before." She glanced and said, "It's not a big deal. You'd better get used to it." He said, "By the way, Adele, you..." "Yes, that's the kind of reaction I'm expecting. Wake-up time is 5. The Adelaide Sergio gets up from her bed, sits in front of the mirror, and says, "I am used to getting out of bed already. But this was the first time in years that I chose to spend more time in front of the mirror than going through piles of documents." She fluttered and said, "I may not have brought a huge change to my appearance, but I know I look good right now." She sits on the sofa, glowing and radiant, and says, "HM? What is it? Do I have something on my face?" Rox, sitting in front of her, says, "No, never mind." She says, "Are you sure you are okay, Rox? You might have overworked yourself this time." He says shyly, "Ahaha, no, I'm fine." She stared and said, "Liar! Those twitchy eyes, they tell me he is nervous about something." He trembled. He's all stiff, and his lips look pursed. He gulped. "Okay, I guess I will help him out." Adelaide, Sergio said, "I wish he was a bit more confident, but oh well." "I heard you visited Sotona before coming here." Rox said, "Huh? How did you know? What were you doing there in the first place? We already have plenty of jewelry here." "Oh, you see. It was only natural that a prestigious domain like Yuden be home to the greatest dwellers around. Many precious jewels are glittering, sparkling. You could not find finer jewelry anywhere else in the southern regions." The fact that Rox still wanted to visit another city known for its jewelry, a ring with a blue gem lying there, could only mean one thing. "Were you looking for a particular stone or something?" asked Lady Adelidio Sergio. Rox replies with, "Well." She smiles and says, "Ugh, just spit it out already. He's so shy." Laughing, she rests her hand on her chin and says, "Come on, you know you can tell me anything. It's not like we're strangers." It has already been 9 years and 5 months since we first met. Rox and Adelidio Sergio are both standing. And it's been 3 years since the incident. He smiles and says, "Actually, I was not sure how to tell you this, but I thought you should be the first one to hear it from me." She grinned and said, "Of course, who else would you propose to?" I understand why Rox is so nervous, but there was no time for that. Suddenly, the bell rang with a loud ding-ding. Little girls, fluttering like butterflies, came giggling, picked up a cloth, and started saying congratulations, while cheerfully flapping around. "The answer will be yes either way. Let's see once Rox is done proposing to Toe," Adelidio Sergio said. "I will have to check the new shipments that just arrived. Some boxes are lying around, and some pouches and bags are scattered, and go over the business reports submitted by all the different branches. It might take me all night to finish," Adelio Sergio said, resting her hand on her chin. "So, if he could hurry with the proposal." Are you listening, Adele? But of course, no, the truth is, I was lost in thought. But since I am a highly competent heir, capable of speaking 5 different languages, she, Adelaide, shines and says it's easy for me to guess what Jerox is going to say. An old friend of mine who used to have a crush on me went to a jeweler. Rox said he's sitting there all droopy. And he's so nervous that he can't even look me in the eyes. Not to mention he also has a small box poking out of his chest pocket, and there's a bulge in his pocket. In a small box, there's a ring that's shining, glowing. It must be a box holding a diamond ring of the highest grade. At least 3 carats or more. No one can hide anything from me. There's a reason why she was chosen as heiress. Adele nodded and said, if that's really the way you feel, then all right. It's true that a lot has happened over the last 3 years. Rox said, really, Adele? Thank you for understanding. She said, while smiling, there's no need to thank me. Rox beamed and said, I feel so much more confident now that I know you are encouraging me. She smiled and said, what? Why is he thanking me for encouraging him, when he should be thanking me for accepting the ring? I feel like a cheerleader rather than someone who's just been proposed to. He reaches into his pocket and says, I wanted to get your opinion before giving this to her. After all, you've great taste, and you also know what she likes better than anyone else. She said, I didn't see this coming. He places the ring on the table, and the ring sparkles. Then, she says lifelessly, I did not think I would see the day when I am not excited to see a diamond ring. She lifted a cup and took a gulp. She crumbled and cracked and said, wow, is this really happening right now? I have to at least keep my composure, racking her brain. The ring is gleaming, twinkling. It's not bad. I am impressed by the cut and the quality of the diamond. He placed his hand on his chest and said, that's a relief. Adele said, I really hope Novella likes it. Adele and Rox are sitting face to face and are silent. Adele raises her hand and says, hold on, just a second. So what if I sound bitter just once? There is something I need to know right here and now. A golden-haired girl is standing. This Novella you just mentioned, you're not talking about my younger sister, Novella Sergio, are you? Novella fluttered. Jackie whimpered and said, what took you so long, my lady? Jackie laughed and said, how did it go? What did Master Jerox say? He went to Setona to get a wedding ring, didn't he? Adelaide was sitting silently, then she said to Jackie, yes, he did. Adelaide exhaled softly and said, I knew it. Jackie, brushing her hair with a smile, said, I wish you would dress up like this more often. Jackie said, gosh, look at you. I have yet to see someone with more beautiful eyes anywhere in this kingdom. No wonder Master Jerox fell for you. Adele said, Jackie, I have a bit of a headache right now. Jackie smiled and said, I bet you do. It's been a crazy day for you. You have just been proposed to, after all. I would. Adele replies, he did not propose to me. It turns out the ring is for someone else. Can you believe it? Jackie smiled, and Adele said, if you don't mind, I'd like to be alone for a while. Jackie was dazed and said, how could that be possible? Adelaide closed her eyes and said, it seems he is in love with Novella. Adelaide said calmly, you look more surprised than I am. Jackie raised her voice, nearly, no way. That doesn't make any sense. Didn't he already confess his love for you? How could his feelings change so quickly? Adelaide said, tell me about it. Jackie replies, he even said you were the only one he's ever been in love with, and that he would be willing to do anything for you. That was 3 years ago, but he also said he was going to wait for you no matter how long it took. Adele said, how do you know all that? Were you spying on us back then? Jackie covered her mouth with both hands and said, oops. Jerox proposed to me 3 years ago. Jerox was down on one knee, holding a flower in his hand, proposing to Adelaide, but because I was fighting to become the heiress, I had no time for love back then. If you really love me, ask me again in 3 years. If your feelings have not changed, then I promise to reconsider, was what I told him. But now he suddenly likes my younger sister. Shall I call Lady Novella here immediately? Adelie was telling Jackie everything. Jackie turned around in anger and said, I should have known. She's been asking for you all day. And you won't even ask her for an explanation. Deli was holding some papers, staring at them quietly. Jackie walked up angrily and said, What are you doing? Are you working? The papers were heaped on the table. Adelie said, I understand how you feel, but please keep it down. I've got to finish all of this by morning. Jackie said, How are you not upset about this whole situation? She replied, If I don't finish this now, a total of 32 stores won't be able to open their doors on time tomorrow. Imagine all the people that will be affected if that happens. Hundreds of workers depend on me. Jackie says, Oh my! And knowing Novella, she'll come see me herself. Novella is standing at the door. Novella knocked gently on the door. A voice replied, Come in. Novella asked softly, Can I talk to you, Adele? The reply came, Of course. Novella stepped inside, her footsteps light and hesitant. Adelie sat on the sofa with her back to Novella, facing the glass. Novella spoke softly, I'm sorry, so sorry for what happened. Are you mad at me? Adelie said, Me? Mad? Novella sniffled and replied, I could never have imagined that Jerox had feelings for me. Adele glances and replies, It's all my fault. If you'd like, I would like you to leave the room. She flapped the paper and said, I have got work to do. Adele. Novella said, Adele, we can talk tomorrow. If you can get up before I leave at dawn, that is. But Adele, Adelie said. Jackie, escort her back to her room. Jackie held Novella gently and said, Come with me, my lady. Novella hesitated. But Adelie sat with her back turned, papers in hand, facing away from the door. She spoke softly, There's something I need to tell you. Sister, please come. Just then, a faint creak echoed in the room. Adelie glanced over her shoulder, alert. She steadied herself with one hand on the table. She whispered, almost to herself, Is she really gone? Somebody stepped slowly toward the window. The room burst open, and a rustling sound began. You look like the protagonist of a tragic love story. Adele said angrily, When did you get here? Why are you spying on me? He leapt through the window and said, Took you long enough to notice me. He stepped forward and added, You're the one who told me not to come in through the door. Adele responded, That doesn't mean you can come in through the window. He said, Anyway, got something for me? She reached her hand toward him, a paper in his hand, and said, Here's what you asked for, right? Adele said, Humph. Although he is a bit of a pain, he sure is good at what he does. Adelie said, holding the paper in her hand and looking at it. Well, he is a member of this family after all. Kid and Sergio. The Sergio family is only my son and my younger brother. He is my half-brother, to be exact. He came into our household the year I turned 14, and he knew his place right away. Hi, you must be Adele. A man stood there, carrying Kid and Sergio in his arms. I don't have a name yet, but I'll tell you once I do. Just so you know, I have no interest in money and power. I am sure I never will, so please don't kill me. How could I throw that blood-covered child out of the house when that was the first thing he said to me? A man dressed in a black pant coat stood there, holding Kid and Sergio in his arms. Standing before him was Adelie. In the end, I was the one who gave him a name, and she touched his bloody hand and the room inside the mansion. Caden grew up under my care and eventually became the leader of the guild, operating secret missions for the domain. The guild was mainly tasked with getting rid of unwanted pests in ways that were not entirely legal. There was a knife, and it was stained with blood. Kidan, Sergio, and Adelie turn away. Adelie speaks in a tired, composed tone, anyway. I'll have a look at it later. You can go now. I'm too tired right now. Adele said, I heard Jerox had a change of heart. She turned back and asked, How do you do? He stepped outside the window and said, Do you want me to kill him? You just need to tell me. I can get rid of him for you. Kidan said, I can get rid of him for you? The look on Kidan's face tells me that he's not joking around. The last time I saw him, Like, he and she from another influential family got his arm chopped off for insulting me in public. The man in the blue coat pointed sharply at the girl with the pink ribbon and shouted. The man's hand was injured, covering his hand in blood. There was no evidence that the Kidan was behind the incident, but I know it was him. Jerox shivered, and there is no need. Rocks could still be useful to me. I cannot afford to lose such a skilled accountant. Kidan said, besides, you don't have the right to do such a thing. I never gave it to you. Adele said, I would rather you butt out of my life and start minding your own business. Kidan said, how can you be so oblivious? Don't you know how much of a little bitch Novella is? Adele asked Kidan, what are you talking about? Watch your mouth. He smirked and replied, fine, if that's what you want. But is it not funny? It seems I know something that you don't for once. He whooshed and jumped from the window. She slammed and said, how dare he speak to me that way? She sat in the window and said, he is such a troublemaker. I could always give Caden a scolding for his unruly behavior or even kick him out of the house, but there is a reason why I choose not to do so. She rose and said, he never ceases to impress me. That's because my adorable and fragile younger sister is a truly gifted little bitch. I can still recall memories from my previous life, to put it simply. She is standing with her back turned, dressed very simply. I was born into an ordinary lower-class family in Korea. I got lucky enough to be admitted into a decent university. But I did not come from a privileged background. I was never acknowledged for all the sacrifices I made at work. A teacher is scolding him while holding a paper in his hand. Yet a well-connected colleague, who was born with a silver spoon in her mouth, once even got credit for my achievements. Boys and girls are talking and laughing together. And she stands alone, papers in hand, with her back turned to all of them. In a drunken state, I finally confronted her about it, but I am not the one who you should be mad at. If anyone is to blame, it's your parents. Ugh, F***ck this world. Just give me a chance. I shouted that if I could study abroad, I would make the best of it, and not waste my time partying like everyone else. All my life I have been so compliant and hardworking. I always do what everyone asks of me. She raged and said, I am sick of the rat race and living paycheck to paycheck. It's not my fault that I don't come from a rich family. Damn it! She stepped and said, once I began to erupt, the words just kept spilling out. Slipped right up until the moment I lost my footing. She clenched and splashed. I want to be reborn into a rich family. I was just trying to blow off some steam. Little did I know that I would not live to see another day. Or at least not in Korea anyway. Sir, please come look at her eyes. They're pink, just like yours. There was a hazy atmosphere, a blur, a confusion. The girl in the black frock said, who's that? And what am I doing here? Why are my hands moving on their own? Oh, wrinkled squirrel! Wait, are these even my hands? Ugh, the baby is crying. Why am I crying? What in the world is going on? I am going to get fired if I don't show up to work tomorrow. You are right. The man gently puts the little girl to sleep. She freezes. And then, her body begins to shimmer, glowing with glitter and shine. He whispers, she's got the eyes of a fine merchant. He touched the baby's face and said, I will name you Adelaide. But who gave you the right to do that? He touched Adelaide's face, and she glanced and thought, hold on, I know that ring. It's just like the one I read about in this novel a couple of days ago. There is no doubt about it. I know this because it was described in full detail. The diamond eyes of the eagle finally engraved on Count Sergio's ring glimmered. An open book lies on the surface. She, sequined. That's the one I am sure of. Look, my lord, I think she likes your ring. He dazzled and glowed and said, now that's my daughter. Is the man really my dad? She groaned. So basically what happened is I died in real life and was reborn into the world depicted inside a novel I read. I was reborn as the daughter of the richest man in the Southern Territories and Auntie Sergio. Not only have I been reborn into a rich family, but the richest family in the entire region. She waved. "Ga." The baby girl giggled. And her father said, "What's wrong, baby girl?" "Oh, nothing." She squeezed his father's ring. "I am never letting this go." It's daytime, surrounded by lush green trees. The girl in the white shirt says, my lady, please slow down. You already took many classes this morning. Please don't push yourself too hard. You need some time to rest. I will tell Count Sergio to reduce the amount of." The Adelie turned and smiled and said, "No, don't say anything to him. I like this lifestyle." She whooshed into the garden and said that this is what I have always dreamed about. This is great. I love it. My mother may have died at an early age, and my father is absent most of the time, but that's nothing compared to the hardships I had in my previous life. She was running step to step. Everything was perfect until I was faced with my first obstacle at the age of 11. A girl came and said, "Hi Adele, my name is Novella." I knew this day would come. I just didn't expect her to be quite so on time. The villainess from the book Don't Trust Blondes. The novella sparkled and glittered, Novella Sergio. When I first woke up and heard Count Sergio's name, I was able to understand the situation quickly thanks to Novella. Novella was from Count Sergio's family, and I was her older half-sister. Novella. People thought it was the author's intention to trick the readers by giving her an innocent-sounding name. But Novella was originally the protagonist of the story, not the antagonist. Novella is standing quietly with both hands clasped in front of her. She was your typical, innocent, and beautiful female protagonist. The problem was that it was a serialized novel that was still a work in progress. The author tried to portray Novella as a patient, forgiving character, but the readers found that she was too bland and lacked personality. Novella stands still, lost in deep thought. Ickney Whitwasher, she sucks. They replaced her with a male protagonist. Johann Saneb, 21, this is disappointing. I don't think I will continue reading. Bye. Morning Sausage, what was the author thinking? What an awful character. Ugh, I will come back to read once things start getting interesting. That's when Novella's friend Kalo was introduced to the story. While Noella received all the hate from the readers, appearance A+, background A+, compatibility with the male protagonist A+, Chloe gained popularity as the new female protagonist. The readers argued that Shalloy was a more suitable partner for the male protagonist. Who would end up taking the throne after overthrowing the tyrannical crown prince. Chloe is holding something in her hand, while Novella stands silently behind him. In the end, the author was pressured into swapping the female protagonist for her. And since only the protagonist can get away with anything in the story, when Noella lost her place as the heroine, she was met with a miserable fate. Everything she had done up until that point was scrutinized by the readers, and she was deemed a conspirator. Eventually, Noella became responsible for most of the bad things happening in the kingdom. The only reason I could be so calm around someone like her is because a gray-haired girl, wearing a headband, stands beside a red-haired girl, both of them holding their claymores. Even if I did not chase her away or do anything to stop her from running our household, she was destined to die at the age of 20. Nice to meet you, Noella. Adelie grinned and extended her hand. Gee, let's be friends. If you are alive anyway. That should have been enough. She is writing something on the paper with a pen. I did not get to the very end of the story, but I read somewhere that Noella became terminally ill and lived her final days in agony before finally passing away. She thought, why did the author have to kill off the character who used to be the protagonist? Adelie is writing something, scribbling. I felt sorry for Noella as her older sister, so I tried my best to change her fate, but she seemed determined to continue on her path to becoming the ultimate villainess. At 11 years old, she got a few of the house staff fired by framing them for crimes they did not commit. Noella, dressed in a pink frock with 2 ponytails, is sitting and smiling. At age 12, she bullied one of her classmates into dropping out of school. Adele tapped her hand on the table and said, Even Caden came close to dying a couple of times as a result of Noella's schemes. And every time I tried to set her back on the right path, something bad would happen to our family. A man is holding the bedsheet tightly, crying, and says, "Lady Adderley, maybe that's what I got for trying to go against fate." Adele sat on the bed and said, "Sorry, but at least I tried. I think I have done enough." But I still decided to continue doing everything I could for her as her older sister. After all, according to the book, there was only 1 year left until her death, and it wasn't like I couldn't fix any mess she might cause during that time. A daily sleep on the bed. Money could fix anything, and I had more money than I could possibly wish for. She turned and thought, but it looks like she began to reveal her true nature. Even Throg Caden is also a part of this family. I didn't need to compete with him since he was submissive to me from the start. Who cares? The entire domain will soon belong to me. Instead of worrying about tribal matters, I should focus my attention on the annual banquet taking place tomorrow. She slept. I need to get some sleep. What a wonderful banquet! Not that I would expect anything less from the Sergios. It seems all the most prestigious families of the southern region are in attendance. We do not need to envy the noble families in the capital. It surely does not get better than this. There stands a magnificent golden-colored palace. A large crowd has gathered there, chattering and mumbling among themselves. I was told they are planning to announce who the next heir will be. 2 girls are standing together, one of them dressed in a turquoise frock, whispering. The turquoise-dressed girl says, "But as you know, Lady Adderley is not quite calm." The girl in the purple frock said, "What a pleasure to see you here today, Victorious Dania." Victorious Dania flinched. Lady Adderley approaches with a smile and says, "I hope you are enjoying yourselves. We are so lucky to have you supplying the highest quality fabric to us." Good, I don't think she heard me. Viscountess Dania said, "Ha ha ha, you flatter me." She said, "I only?" "Huh! Where did she go? Lady Adderley?" The girl glared and said, "This is not the first time I have heard her talking about you behind your back." The Lady Adele said, "Hello, my lord." "Really? What else did she say about me?" "I heard her complain about how cold and calculating of a person you are. She also said you would make a bad ruler, even worse than Lord Sergio." "That's good to know." The girl said, "Are you not going to do anything about it?" Lady Adderley said, "What do you want me to do in front of all these people?" There was whispering and murmuring all around. Lady Adderley whispered, "Tomorrow, check for defects in the supplies she sent. There's bound to be at least one. She can be held accountable for that. But what if we don't find any? Believe me, you are guaranteed to find at least one defective roll of textile." She raised a glass of drink and said, "I don't care what she does on her own time." Holding a glass in her hand, she says, "But I won't allow her to insult me in my own house. You should have apologized when you had the chance." The Viscountess Denia turned. "You picked the wrong person to mess with. She's gotten too complacent ever since I let her have a monopoly over the production of fabrics." Adderley holding a glass of drink, he said, "I will make sure this serves as a good warning to everyone else." Jackie said, "You sure have a lot on your plate, my lady." "Poor her." She whimpered. Lady grinned and said, "Huh? What do you mean?" She swirled the glass and said, "I am having a great time." So, this kind of rivalry is a must between rich families. There was a clamor over there. I am satisfied with every aspect of this new life. This is everything I ever wanted. I am not even concerned about Noela, who just entered the banquet hall. Noela entered in a white frock. Here comes Lady Noela. Rox is standing, holding Noela's hand. "Wait, who's the man with her?" "Huh! That seems to be Rox. Are you really okay with this, my lady?" "Why would I not be?" "Because he confessed to you first." Adderley scoffed and said, "I can't go out with every guy that has a crush on me. I would have to date every man present here tonight. Jerox just so happened to be an educate marriage candidate." "Jerox is my ring, huh?" A decent appearance and a decent family could be a big help with overseeing the domain. Nothing less, nothing more. What happened there 3 years ago was just a test to see if he really loved me. Jarek sat down and had flowers in his hand in front of Adelie. If he showed no change of heart even after all that time, I was planning to accept his proposal. But now that he has a thing for none other than my own sister, it's game over. Jerox is a stand with Noila. I need to surround myself with better people, when click-clack. When everything came to a halt, Adele and Noila stood face to face. Noila made a claim and said, Adelie. Adele was standing with Jackie. And she grinned, and Jackie bowed. Oh, I am not looking forward to this. Adele glanced. I'd bet they are wondering what Jerox is doing here with Noila. People started to murmur and glance. Instead of me, I wish they would focus more on the banquet. I put a lot of effort into making sure everything would look perfect for this event. But I guess gossiping is a lot more interesting than the banquet itself. It's not like I don't understand. A dark, starry night. At night, there is a white balcony with a lush green tree beside it. Adelie and Novella are standing on the balcony. Novella's, I'm sorry, Adelie. I told the rocks that we shouldn't be seen together at the banquet, but, Adele said in Noila, how could one be suspicious of such an innocent-looking face? Novella was shining and shimmering. Adele smirked and said, it's all right. I hope it will work out for the two of you. She smiled and said, I was caught off guard yesterday when I heard the news, but now that I have had time to think about it, maybe it's for the best. If Noila settles down with Jerox, then she won't obsess over the prince, who is the male protagonist. She will still die young, but that way there is a smaller chance of her being turned into a villainess and made to suffer humiliation. Noila said he just would not listen to me and insisted that we show up together. He said you would get over it since you are so strong and independent, unlike me. Yeah, right. Don't think I have not seen through your little act. Adele sighed, and Noila drooped. Adele said, I guess he is right. You should probably tell father about you and Rox as soon as he gets back. Noila said, are you really okay with that? Adelie smiled and said, of course, you don't have to worry about me. And she patted Noila's shoulder. Novella fell into deep thought while Adelie was looking at her, and said, now go back to your fiancé? I am sure he is waiting for you. Noila said, but Rox peeked from behind the door. You two are so cute. I hope you enjoy your evening together. She stroked Novella. Adele smiled and said goodbye to Novella. Jackie was standing near Adelie. My lady, I think you should try too. Look a little more upset. Novella is walking away, clicking. She seems genuinely worried about you. Adele lifted and said if she really was, she would not have come here in the first place. And all the prestigious families in the Southern Territories have gathered here tonight. So, if she really was concerned about what people might think of me when they saw her and Rox together, she should not have come, especially when she has no ties in the business circle. Maybe you are right, and I should have acted a little more upset. But how was I supposed to do that when I really don't feel that way? She said, placing her hand on her chin. Adelia turned and said, do you think people would buy this face? I don't know. I think you could do better. What do you want me to do then? Force myself to cry? We both know that would not be a problem for you. I can't deny that. Adele wiped her face and said to Jackie, I could throw a tantrum in front of everyone and cause a scene. Pfft. Adele halted. What was that sound? Adele turned. Jackie said, what's wrong, my lady? Adele said, did you hear something just now? It sounded like a man's voice. Jackie said, what do you mean? There are only two of us here. Adele walked and strode. Adele said, no, I could swear I heard a voice. A man is approaching, stepping slowly, and said, there you are, Adele. I've been looking all over for you. Adele turned toward him. And she said, Martel? What's he doing here? My cousin Martel. He disapproves of me becoming the next heir because I am a woman. Although I have given him opportunities even when I did not have to, he still acts as if I have stolen his birthright or something. Glare all you want. Adele is smiling, while Martel glares angrily from behind. Are you done talking to Noela? What do you want? Adele grinned and said, I know he's up to something. There's a sneer on his face. Martel smirked and said, I wonder what it will be this time. Those people over there. Adele asked, What? Aren't they supposed to be your friends? Novella says with a shy smile. Adele flicked and said, I know what you are trying to do, and sorry, but it won't work on me. Adele is nonchalant. There is no doubt Noela was already popular, but now that she's with Jerox, people will be even more curious about her. There was clamoring and chattering. Adele said, Don't you have better things to do? I think there is still work waiting for you. Adele said to his cousin Martel, My father will be back next week, and you know he does not mess around. When it comes to business, don't think you will have it easy just because you are family. Martel said, You are one to talk. You think those people are stupid? Why do you think they have taken a sudden interest in Noela? He shrugged and said, Adele glared and said, Get to the point. He stepped toward her and said, I heard Uncle is planning to officially name his heir soon. Martel leaned on Adele, and Adele said, But in case you did not know. Noela smiled and said, In the Sergio's family? One has to be married to be eligible to become an heir. Adele goes dun. According to family tradition, one has to be married in order to be eligible to become an heir. There are no restrictions on who one's marriage partner can be, but oh, screw this. Adele stood in front of the window and said, How come I never knew about this? The boy in the black coat said, My lady, this is outrageous. It's like I have been stabbed in the back. I feel robbed of something I have always thought to be mine. She said while clenching, I am not content with just being the daughter of the rich family. I want to be the one and only heir to the family estate. That has been my lifelong dream. My entire existence until now has been dedicated to the pursuit of that very goal. Adele turned and said, How come my father never said anything? He could have told me about this. That's because most coming-of-age ceremonies until now have been accompanied by an arranged marriage. But in your case, we thought it would not be necessary. The boy said, You know Lord Sergio always said you would be his heir. Adelie shouted and said, So what's this about? He said, I am sure he did not expect Lady Noela to end up with Master Jerox. This was not a part of this plan. I don't think he could have predicted this. Adele placed her hand on her forehead and said, Enough? Adele sighed. So, in other words, Father was willing to bypass my arranged marriage because he thought I was going to end up with Jerox. I seem to have blown my chance overnight. Did Father say anything else? Yes, in the first letter he sent us after his departure. Count Sergio asked me to make all preparations necessary for your wedding ceremony so that it could be held as soon as he returned, just in time for the announcement of the next heir. Adele said, Wait, don't tell me you got the letter from Noela, right? He is standing with Noela. Well, never mind, thank you. It's just as I thought. There was a clack at the door, and Jackie entered step, and said, What's going on, my lady? Adele said, I wish I knew. That's a sly little minx. She made a move on Jerox after reading Father's letter. You give her an inch and a side, and she takes a mile. That's what I get for being nice to her. She sat, Jackie said. Did Lady Noela plot all this? Adelie sat and said, It seems that way. She is not the type to stop at just this. This is nothing compared to all the evil deeds she performed in the novels. She would not stop at stealing my future husband. She must be up to something else. She has always felt insecure about the fact that she is an illegitimate child. Now I finally know what she is really after. Oh, that little bitch. Jackie clenched her frock and said, Please calm down, my lady. I am sure Lord Sergio won't change his mind about naming you as his heir. He will. Adele said, It seems you don't know him. What do you think he is going to say when he hears about Noela and Jerox's wedding? Jackie said, Well, I presume he will give Lady Noela a good scolding. Wow. No, he will be impressed that she managed to pull off such a feat. Jackie slumped. Adele said, That's my father for you. He is an erratic person with an odd sense of morality. The only reason he chose me as his heir was not because I was his oldest daughter or of direct bloodline, but because he saw that I was a competent worker. I would not mind as much had she really been in love. But now, I just feel like I have been betrayed. What if Master Jerox asks you to take him back? Adele yelled. He does not deserve a second chance. I won't be someone's second choice. Are you saying that you are ready to give up on becoming the family here? But no, over my dead body. Adele shouted. Jackie became lost in thought. Adele said, Phew, looks like I have no choice. I can't back down now. I have worked too hard to get to where I am. There's no guarantee that Noela will be named the next heir because of her marriage. But there is no doubt that father is going to be disappointed in me. Adele said, I am going to find another man? Jackie was surprised and said, Pardon? A daily reply, I will find someone even better than Jerox. That's the only way. But Lord, Sergio returns next week. 1 week is all I need. Jackie, if it's so easy, then what have you been doing all these years? Marriage is not something you should rush into, my lady. Adele said, Don't worry, the bar is not that high. So, to satisfy my father, I just have to find a man who's better than Jerox, that's all. Besides, father is not concerned about his potential son-in-law not coming from a rich household. I supposed he would not care. He is already the richest man in the Southern Territories, after all. You need someone who can support you emotionally rather than financially. But he still needs to be from a noble family since I am the Count's daughter, and he can't be too talkative or selfish. Oh, and given that we'll be attending various formal settings together, he's got to be tall and good-looking. And while we're at it, I would also like him to be smart, kind, and loyal. Adele said such a man should not be too hard to find, right? Jackie replies. I am not sure if that kind of person exists. Adele sighed and said, You are probably right. The more I think about it, the more I come to realize how good of a marriage partner Jerox was. I am sure there are men out there who fit most of the criteria and are good-looking, tall, smart, and kind. But loyal, I might be asking for too much. Where would you find a perfect man like that? And even if he did exist, how would he still be single? That is unless he is a holy knight or something. Adele was listening and said, Did you say a holy knight? Jackie replies, That's right. Note that that description perfectly fits the holy knights of San Fidelio. Jackie asked, Are you all right, my lady? Adele raised her hand and said, Hold on. Don't tell me you are. Adele smiled and said, Why did I not think of this sooner? This is really the only way. Jackie hesitated, then said, I don't understand. Adele said, What is there to understand? We are going on a search for my husband. Jackie said, I can't believe you brought that with you. She fumbled with it and examined it closely. Well, I can't go there empty-handed. She had a box filled with gold that shimmered and shined brightly. Money is the solution to just about anything in life. Who needs a map and a compass when you have gold? Although it's only a short trip to the temple, I'd rather be overprepared than underprepared. The boxes are heaped. Adele tapped her hand and said, I have got to find myself a husband before my father returns. Lord Sergio must have reached the Eastern Territories by now. Once he crosses Lennox Bridge, it will only take him a week to get here. Adele said, but it might take him longer if the bridge happened to accidentally fall apart, don't you think? Jackie replies, Why would a perfectly normal bridge suddenly crumble for no reason? Anything is possible with Caden. Caden cleared. Oh. Jackie said, You should just get him to find you a husband then. Would not that be a lot easier? I don't trust him to bring anyone alive. Adele plopped and sighed. Oh. Although Caden would be willing to do almost anything for me, there are a few things I would rather we stay away from, since he is so protective of me whenever a situation involving a third party arises. How do you want me to kill him? Is his only reaction. Don't you ever feel frightened by him? Adele tilted, said Caden. No. He is good looking, but there is something intimidating about him. No one I know can even look at him in the eyes. Well, I personally find him cute. Adele shrugged. Jackie said, "What? He is like a little puppy. Take a closer look at him next time. He reminds me of a lone, untamed hunting dog. He is just missing a muzzle and a tail. He might have turned out differently if he had had a proper mother. Apparently, his birth mother abused him up until the day he came into our house. Thinking back, I am just glad he grew up as well as he did." Adele said, "Moreover, he is quite useful. Caden has never failed me in any of the tasks I have given him. Here's the reason why criminal syndicates never even come near the Yuden domain. It's because he is the ruler of the dark world. Anyway, you don't have to worry about him." Jackie slid the door and said, "You are probably right. I should worry about you first." Leaves from the trees swirl through the air. The wind is strong. Adele was watching the whoosh of wind. They arrive at San Fe de Leo with the rhythmic clip-clop of hooves echoing around them, a land of lush green trees, snow-covered mountains, and a majestic castle gleaming in the distance. It's the most famous place in all the Southern Territories, but not just anyone is allowed to enter. It's a holy temple dedicated to Ennis, the founding god of the Trennis Empire. And it also serves as a secret refuge for priests, saints, and holy knights. It has served as an emotional sanctuary to many, offering them comfort in times of need. Hope fills the eyes of anyone who looks up at the temple from afar. It gives some a sense of peace. It gives others a renewed sense of strength or courage. Adele smiled and said, "In my case, it's going to give me my future husband. I hope I can find a suitable marriage candidate there, someone just as magnificent as the temple itself. The more I think about it, the more I realize a holy knight would make for the perfect husband. It takes a lot to be admitted for training at the temple. Candidates are picked based on their family background, their education, their physical strength, and their potential. Those who fall short in any one of these candidates are not even given a chance to prove themselves." She thought, "The only downside is that they are all sexually abstinent. Not that I care. Besides that, it's better than being overly horny. It's an arranged marriage after all. I would rather have a man who is reserved than one who's reckless. As long as the guy looks normal and is not impotent, I don't care. I can worry about finding a perfect husband later. For now, I just need someone to fill the role." Jackie said to Adele, "But my lady, are the holy knights allowed to get married? I don't think I have ever heard about any of them doing so." Adele said, "It's rare, but it still happens. It's not illegal or anything. I did my homework before coming here. Most people don't know about how marriage works in the Holy Temple, but the Yuden domain overflows with both money and valuable information, which includes all one needs to know about the temple. To get into the temple, one must first go through rigorous training at a monastery, after which one can choose to become either an all-priest or a holy knight, depending on one's preference and special powers gained during training. Only about 1 in 10 people manage to successfully make it out of the monastery. It may be brutally difficult, but such a system is what allows the temple to earn its noble and sacred reputation in the first place. If just anyone could get into the temple, it would not be such an enviable feat as Dolly said. I don't know about the priest, but it's not a bad idea for a holy knight to get married. It's an honor to serve at the temple, but someone's got to carry on the family name, don't you think?" Jackie replies, "That's true, and there is no guarantee that one will even survive the training. In some, the holy knights may be highly admired, but they have no money and hold no special status in society. They need to prepare for their future after they walk out of the temple." They arrived at their destination with the sound of clip-clopping hooves. "It could be a win-win situation for both me and the holy knight willing to marry me," the coachman said. "We are almost there, my lady." There was a sudden whoosh. "Just a moment." Jackie fumbled and said, do you think they will let us into the monastery? They would probably catch us if we tried to sneak in." Adele said, "We are not seeking in." She clacked and said, "I am the heir to the richest family in the Southern Territories. I don't have to stoop so low." Jackie glanced and said, "Are you going to bribe them?" Then there whoosh. "What? No," Adele said, "we have spent enough money already. Jackie replies, then what? Then she flipped the papers. I am here to collect money. Adele grinned, and she had the money in her hands. A boy comes out from there, making a dun-dun sound and says, You're not allowed inside. Please leave. The carriage driver says, But my lady has traveled a long way to come here. He remains unyielding and says, This is no ordinary temple. This is the great San Fidelio temple. Adele glanced and said, You can't just barge in here and demand to meet His Excellency. Well, he won't be my future husband. They arrive with a click-clack sound, and he says, Oh my! Adele says, Please excuse us for being so rude. The carriage driver says, My lady. And the other man is startled. The man says, You must make an appointment beforehand to go inside. I'm truly sorry, but rules are rules. Just then, a man steps in and says, Hey, what's going on over there? And he said, Were we expecting a guest today? The man standing with Adele says, Oh, your grace. Adele caught a glimpse and said, That must be the bishop. There is no doubt the holy knights are handsome and all, but these priests also seem to have their own charm, just like the ones I saw in movies. The bishop walks in with heavy footsteps and asks, Who is this lady, and what is she doing here? Adele replies, Oh, never mind. Then she says it with a laugh. The man standing with Adele points and says, This lady here says she would like to meet His Excellency, and Adele becomes a bit awkward. The bishop says, What for? His Excellency is not the kind of man who can meet without prior arrangements. He turned and said, I understand you have come a long way, but expectations can't be made. Adele said, I see. And I thought he wouldn't even look at me. San Fidel is not a tourist attraction. It's a sacred place where people gather to learn the teachings of the goddess. Adele said, I am perfectly aware of that. It's also a place where one can learn about human virtues, love, and mercy. The bishop halted. The bishop glanced and said, May I ask who you are? He was startled. Black hair, strong facial hair features, and pink eyes. Could it be? Adele said, Nice to meet you. Your Grace, I am Adelaide Sergio. Bishop smiled and said, May I ask what the purpose of your visit is, my lady? Adele grinned and said, I am here on business as the heiress of the Yudin domain. Bishop shivered and said, I am not a prophet, but I have a bad feeling about this. A very bad feeling. I must send her back before things escalate. Adele turned and said, This is such a beautiful place. It's so peaceful I can't imagine how relaxing it would be to spend some time here. The bishop started walking step by step. And he said, I thank you for your kind words, and as I said before, you need a prior appointment to stay here. No exceptions can be made. I ask for your understanding, my lady. Adele said, Of course we have similar rules in our domain as well. Like the one that states we should always charge our customers no matter the circumstances. Bishop said, Unless, of course, they are priests from this temple. Jackie lifted some money. These are invoices from the hotels we have stayed in. She had money in her hand. Adele said, All the hotels in our family's possession usually require guests to make a reservation in advance too. Bishop said, Oh no? Jackie said, These are the invoices from the past month. Adele said, Extremely welcoming. That being said, we have always been welcoming to the priests from the San Fidelo temple, even if they did not follow standard procedures. Bishop smiled and said, Yes, now that you mention it, as you can see for yourself, though it's not a huge sum, we lose money every time you stay at our hotels, but since you live in accordance with the word of God and rules seem to be of utmost importance to you, perhaps we will have to ask you to follow our rules as well. We have been very grateful for your generosity. Adele sparkled and glittered said, I was simply following the teachings of Annie's, treating others with kindness and respect. She grinned, But did you really think you could get away without paying a single bill? Even our cheapest rooms cost at least 200 to 300 rubles. Why should we go out of our way to offer such special treatment? Become the more seeds you sow, the more fruits you will harvest. She clacked the cup of tea. Father always knows how to think a few steps ahead of everyone. Adele said, I know. I don't plan to stay too long. I would just like to speak to His Excellency, that's all. Bishop said, but Lady Adele? Lady Adele replies, by the way, you look very good in that cloak we had made for you. As a devout follower of Venice, I feel honored to have been of service. Bishop Dizzy leaned and said, oh my. It just so happens that pillar you are leaning on is also the product of a generous donation my father made 2 years ago. Oh, that statue over there, as well as the golden statue, shined and glowed. The bishop holds his head and sighs. Adele is holding her chin and smiling. I remember picking the color myself. Unfortunately, His Excellency is unavailable right now. If you would like, I can relay a message for you. Bishop sighed. Adele moved forward with a click-clack. Adele stood in front of the statue and said to Bishop, I remember having the most skilled engraver in all the southern territories. Engrave the scriptures on these statues. Adele clenched her hand and said the entire blacksmith's guild had to work night and day to melt hundreds of pounds worth of gold in time for the ceremony. But it seems to have been all worth it now that I see the finished product. Adele stood staring ahead with her fists clenched. Lift up your eyes, and you will find the answer you are looking for. Adele, dressed in white, stands by the window, glancing outside. Someone is coming with the sound of footsteps. The boy stops abruptly near Adele and says, Nothing is free in this world, Adele. Among the priests and the knights who receive these supplies, some will turn out to be influential people. They might become the rulers of the southern territories, or even the entire empire one day. Adele said, Wait a minute, did you not say the same thing back at the Parquet Temple, and at the Tena Temple, and the Medina Temple? So he is basically setting up safety nets everywhere. Remember, Adele, there's no such thing as wasting money in business. Both of them are standing by the window, looking outside. Jackie is standing beside Adele, visibly startled. I finally understand you, Father. The seeds you have sown are ready for harvest. The door rattles. The bishop coughs, knocks on the door with a click, and says, Lady Adele. A voice comes from the room. Yes, Your Grace. He said, as I mentioned before, His Excellency is currently not available to meet with you. Adele groaned and said, Is there anyone else I can meet in his stead then? Bishop said, Yes, he has agreed to see you, but he is probably not the kind of person you were expecting. Please be advised that anything you see or hear must be kept strictly confidential. Adele grinned and said, Don't worry, I know how to keep a secret. What's in there that he's so worried about? A dragon or something? He said, May I warn you about a couple of things before you enter, my lady? Adele replies, Yes, of course. Business is all about give and take. And since he has accepted my request, this is the least I can do. Bishop coughed and said, Now there are about 50 precautions you must follow while. Adele turned and said, Oh, that reminds me, did you not say that you had something to ask him, Jackie? Jackie said, Did I? You'd better have something to ask him, or else. Adele stared at and pressured Jackie. Jackie grabbed. Adele turned and said, Your Grace, I have so much to ask you. Wait, I did not finish. This must be the place. Adele stood near the door. She raised her hand and clicked the door. The door creaked. She stepped in the room and said, I did not know things like this actually existed. It seems to have opened on its own. Is it some kind of holy magic or something? But wait. I really blinked. I can't see anything in here. Pitch black. Adele composed, so this is what the bishop was trying to warn me about. I offer my greetings to the messenger of Venice, guardian of the moon and sun. My name is Adelaide, and I am the first daughter of the Sergio family. It's a true honor to meet you, she said to the man. Please lift up your eyes. That gentle yet authoritative voice. It's a voice that fits perfectly with the mood of this temple. He sounds a lot younger than I imagined, though. I heard you traveled from afar to come here. Adele said, Oh, please forgive me for not making an appointment ahead of time. I did not mean to be rude or go against the rules. I simply was not aware. You must have something very important to ask. Adele said that almost sounded like a threat. I have never felt this intimidated by anyone other than my father. She squeezed. Just who is this man? I only remember seeing the archbishop once from afar. Most of the religious events in the empire were held on national holidays. So my father would attend the largest temple as the representative of the domain, while I was made to go to the second largest one. She gulped and said, I wish I had come here instead. According to the bishop, your family has been a great help to our temple. Oh, please don't mention it, it's your pleasure. The man said, so what is it that you want? Adele replies, he is more impotent than I thought. I can't just say, husband, can I? She stepped forward and said, most people who visit the temple are after the same thing. They all want more power. Adele said, pardon? The man said, is not that why you are here? Oh no, then is it money? Money that you want? She replied, not at all. I already have more money than I could possibly wish for. Wait, is this a test or something? A tall man with long white hair, dressed in white, stands holding a club in each hand, a yellow one in one hand and a white one in the other. He says, you are not here for this. Standing before him, Adelie with the tail said, I would like a husband, please. Is he some kind of old sage who speaks in riddles? The problem is, his voice sounds too young for that. Adele grinned and said, thank you, but that won't be necessary. I come from the Sergio family, after all. He said, then is it magical powers that you want? Adelie replies, no, I am not interested in that either. He asked, do you wish to bring harm upon someone? Adelie said, why would I want that? Besides, I already have Caden to do that for me. Plus, I would not want to mess with Noel since we all know how that would end. I would do better to choose my words wisely. She dazzled and said, according to Ennis, life is something very precious. And before you ask, no, I am not asking for eternal youth, noble status, or a place in heaven. She sparkled and glowed. Are you after flawless beauty? Adelie said, I don't think of that, but I should not be necessary. She shimmered. He said, I think all these things are meanings in God's eyes. He stepped forward, then swooshed. A flash goes off there, and Adelie puts her hand on her face and says, ah, it's so bright. There is a blurry effect, and the man says, you are right. Your words seem to hold truth. Adele looks at him and says, ah. He looks at Adelie. She said, I wish my father was here with me. Because he owes me an explanation. Father, you never told me these temples were inhabited by actual gods. Adele startled and said, is something the matter? The man said, is the sunlight blinding you? Adele replies, no, I am fine. The sunlight is not to blame, you are. She laughed and said, Father must not have met this man yet. If he had, he would have done everything he could to bring this good-looking man into his network. The man dazzled and shined and said, come on, Adelie, snap out of it. Don't forget what you are here for. I have to find out who this man is. Adelie glanced and said, it sure can get very sunny in these highlands. Let's start looking for some clues. That's the San Fidelo symbol, but he does not look like a priest. Is it possible for someone who's not a priest to act as a deputy for the archbishop? Especially someone who's so young. He does not even look a day over 30. He is not a priestess, and that looks like a spot where a sword goes. Adelie was watching and listening attentively. A boy is standing with a sword in his hand. I get it. He must be a holy knight. The man said, are you done scanning me? Adele said, oops. The man said, you are Lady Adelie, right? Forgive me for not introducing myself sooner. Adele said, it's quite all right. Sooner said, the holy knights may be powerful, but it's the priests that have the most influence. The archbishop and priests are in charge of all the most important tasks at the temple. Adele said, but there's one other person who holds similar power. Nice to meet you. Knight Commander. Sooner stared and said, I don't recall telling you who I was. Adele stared and replied, it was just a guess. Sooner glanced and said, but I am not even wearing my suit of armor. Habits don't go away that easily, Commander. I would have figured out who he was sooner if I was not so mesmerized by his look. Every piece of clothing he is wearing is perfectly in place except for his belt, which is a little loose, based on what the bishop told me. And the calluses on this man's hands, I can only come to one conclusion. Adele placed her hand on her chest and said, I am sorry. If I am mistaken, you may even punish me if I am wrong. But Sooner said, go ahead. Adele smiled and replied, I knew it. You must have just returned from years of arduous training inside the Callahan ice cave. Am I right? Sooner stared and said, you could tell that just from looking at my clothes. How naive of him. This was not difficult to figure out at all. Several events have already been held at San Fidelo this year, but there was no talk of this man. Numerous single ladies from prestigious families all across the Southern Territories must have attended. So what would have separated quickly had one of them seen him? But evidently no one had. Adele smiled and replied, no, that's not how I found it out. It's just that if someone like myself, who knows just about everybody of importance in the Southern Territories, has never seen or heard about you before, it must be because you were hidden away in the ice cave for your training. It seems you know about the Callahan ice cave. Of course, becoming the commander of the Knights certainly is not easy, and it does not happen overnight. One should at the very least survive a grueling journey through the notoriously dangerous Ice Valley. A snowy valley where whoosh that explains why no one has even heard of this man before. Sooner said to Adele, in any case, what are you here to discuss? Something that will, Adele said, affect the rest of my life? Yes, a marriage that will determine my entire future. I don't want rumors to spread about my visit here. I don't think I need to explain in too much detail. My plan was simply to ask the Archbishop to find me an ideal marriage candidate, but... She jolted and said, hold on a second. An ideal marriage candidate. Sooner, said Lady Adele. Lady Adele stared. There was a whoosh. She said he is beyond ideal. He is not just like a holy knight but the commander of the holy knights. He is both competent and set for life, not to mention he is handsome beyond words. Jerox was handsome as well, but this man is on a whole different level. The Sooner was dazzling. He possesses an undeniable beauty that embodies absolute human perfection. All right, I need to calm down. Sooner said, what's wrong, my lady? Adele smiled and said, oh, it's just that you still have not told me your name. Sooner felt silent and then said, I am Killian Sishan. Adele said, I see. I am glad I have not heard that family name before. He is a self-made man who does not depend on his family. It does not get better than that. But wait, how old is he? Adele smiled and said, I am amazed that someone so young could become a knight commander. You look even younger than me. Killian Sishan twitched and said, younger than me? Adele said, placing her hand on her mouth, oh my, I turned 21 this year, so I assume you are around that age as well. Am I wrong? He said, I happen to be 6 years older than you, my lady. Adele smiled and said, oh, I apologize then. Good, I am fine with that. She said, forgive me for my rudeness. I am sure your wife would not be happy if she heard what I said. He said, I don't have a wife. Adele squeezed that and said, that's the answer I wanted. Thank you, Your Excellency. Had the Archbishop agreed to see me, I would never have had the chance to meet with this man. This is enough to make me start believing in God. I should not get ahead of myself. There is one more thing I need to verify. Adele said, can I ask something else? I was wondering, do you like blondes? Adele and Killian Sishan stood face to face, and he fell into deep thought. What now? I was wondering, do you like blondes? Adele and Killian Sishan stood face to face. Adele clenched and said, why do you ask? Killian Sishan said, I don't know why you would want to know such a thing, but if I must answer then no, I don't like blondes. Even if she was pretty as an angel, there are no such things as angels. Good answer. He said, are you all right, my lady? Adele replies, oh, I am perfectly fine. Especially now that you are in my life. If only you knew how happy I am to meet you. Killian Sishan said you must be tired from the journey. If it's not too urgent, maybe you should wait to discuss your problem with His Excellency when he arrives. He turned and said he will be back in about 2 weeks. Adele said angrily, no. I can't wait that long. Then halted. Why not? I am sure whatever it is, His Excellency will be able to provide a better answer than I can. Note, I am sure you are all I need, Commander. Kelly and Sishan looked toward Adele and said, Me? Adele replies, Yes, it's something that only you can help me with. Kellyan became silent, then he stepped toward Adele and said, Very well, but let me ask you this first. Adele stomped. Kelly and Sishan stepped closer to Adele and said, What is it you really want from me? Adele replies, I was getting there. Let me explain. I know this might come as a surprise, but I am listening. As you know, there comes a moment in everyone's life when Kellyan stared and said, Just get to the point. Adele said, Let's get married. They both started going. Done. Adele said, Are you okay? I beg your pardon. Let's get married. Did you really propose to someone you have just met for the first time? I am pretty sure I did. Kellyan said, But you don't even know me. Adele replied, I think I know you well enough. You are a young single man who serves as Knight Commander at the San Fidelio Temple, and you must be a skilled swordsman with great holy power since you are able to fill in for His Excellency today. There was rambling. I can also tell from the way you speak that you are from the capital, and the way you tie the laces on your boots tells me you must have lived in Orson for a while. Also, you seem like an honest person who does not like attention. He replied, Lady Adelaide. Adelaide beamed and said, Oh, and you have not called me a crazy lady and kicked me out yet, so that makes you a very patient and nice person as well. If there's anything else I need to know about you, I can learn over time. Well, we will have the rest of our lives to get to know each other. He said, I have no idea why you are doing this. But now I know a thing or two about you as well. She said, Really? You might not be crazy, but you are too intelligent for your own good. You also don't have any real interest in me. You are stubborn. You just don't know when to give up. What you really want is to secure your place as an heir to the domain, am I right? Adele and Kellyan are sitting face to face on chairs, with a table between them. Adele said, I was always destined to be the heir. He replied, Is that so? She sighed and said, My father thought I would marry my friend Jerox. He said, Is that what you were planning to do as well? Yes, but she said it seems like I was not part of his plans since he got engaged to my younger sister. That being said, I am still happy for the two of them. He replied, Your sister must be blonde, right? She said by laughing, Wow, he is sharp. That's right. Kellyan turned. Adele, lost in thought, he said, Did you love him? She replied, Of course not. Did he just stifle a laugh? She said, I am already busy enough with all my work. I don't have time for any more drama in my life. He became quiet and then said, Does marriage really mean nothing to you? That's unusual coming from a lady like yourself. She said, I respect those who believe marriage should be based on love, but I am not like that. He said, Anyway, why me? She said, Are you looking for true love, Commander? They were both sitting face to face on chairs, talking to each other. Kellyan was lost in thought. Adele said, That's what I thought. He's too cold and distant to be able to have affection for anyone. I just can't picture him being in love. Life is all about give and take. If you agree to act as my husband in front of my father, then I promise to do whatever you want. Our family possesses all the wealth and power you could ever dream of. Anything you want in this world could be yours. Adele grinned. If I wanted to, I could get my hands on the world's rarest gem within a week. But I have no interest in gems. I could get you any legendary swords you want, like the magical sword of Trevia or the holy sword of Glorn, along with books on military strategies written by the first king, Johor. Kellyan said, With that kind of offer, any man in the world would be dying to marry you. So why me? Adele said, Just as I expected, he's not an easy catch. Any other knight would be ready to give up his life to get his hands on those items. In that case, don't you think someone like you belongs in the imperial place? He flinched. Adele smiled and said, That's it. You can't possibly be satisfied with staying at San Fidelio as a commander your whole life, can you? He said, What makes you think that? Adele replied, Because it's too small, too cold, and there's barely enough to eat. It's a large temple, but it's inconveniently located high atop the southern mountains. I have yet to meet anyone with so much potential who did not want to go to the capital. It makes no sense for someone who is so competent to be wasting time in a place like this. I am willing to be anything that I am, right? I am sure you must have dreamed of entering the imperial palace at least once in your life. But it won't be easy, especially when the competition is so fierce. Kellyanne asked, and, when the time comes, I promise to support you in any way possible. I will do anything to help you. Adele smiled and said, achieve your ambitions? Kellyanne sat and said, I decline your offer. Adele was shocked and said, but Commander? She clenched. I knew it was not going to be easy convincing him, but he could have at least pretended to think it over. I listened to what you had to say and gave you my reply. I think my work is done. He rose and said, now, if you would please return home. Adele said, can't you just think about it a little more? He said, no, I never change my mind once I have made a decision. Adele became silent and then sprang up and said, okay, I understand. You are not interested in my offer. That's correct. She turned and said, very well then. She started walking back with a click-clack sound. He said, I did not think she would give up so easily. Not that I cared. He clenched his hand and said, what did I expect? I wish you a safe trip. She turned toward the door and halted. Kellyanne called out, Lady Adelaide? Adele said, the floor we are standing on. She turned back and whooshed and said, I could have covered it entirely in gold. They were standing face to face, and Adelaide grinned and said, unless you would prefer diamonds. Let's go, we can talk this out. Two men dragged Adele outside, holding her tightly. She began to struggle and resist. Get your hands off of me, she shouted. Jackie stood in front, startled, and asked, what happened, my lady? They grabbed Adelaide. And she said to Jackie, can't you see? Jackie replied, all of you are right. What a farce. They guided Adelaide out step by step and said, Commander Kellyanne said the exit is this way. He said, please allow my men to show you the way out. I am sorry. It's not paved with gold and diamonds. They dragged the Adelaide. Adele became wobbly and said, I can't believe this. Jackie said, I am guessing things did not go as planned. Adelaide turned and said, give me a second to think. Jackie replied, just what in the world happened, my lady? My lady, look. Jackie gasped, Adelaide, God seems to have come to earth in human form and manifested before us. Adelaide said, no, he is an actual person. Jackie said, no way. Adelaide said, I am embarrassed to think I reacted the same way the first time I saw him. Jackie said, Lady Adelaide? Adele replied, you don't need to guide me to the next. The instructions were clear enough. If you were going to kick me out anyway, she glanced and said, why did you even bother listening to me? Kellyanne said, all right, good. Do you want me to chase you out of here again? If so, then, Adelaide replied. Adelaide jolted and replied, don't do that. No, I take back what I said. Just out of curiosity, why did you ask me if it was money or power I was after? What would you have done had I answered yes? Unwavering, I would have just kicked out right away. He is so cold. Adele laughed by placing her hand on her mouth, and Kellyanne said, I would have told you the same thing and asked you to wait for this excellency to come back. Adele replied, please allow our knights to escort you down the mountain. That's the least I can do considering the kindness shown by your family over the years. We will make sure you travel safely. No, thanks. Kellyanne said, are you sure evil creatures usually come out on nights like tonight during the new moon? Adele replied, I appreciate it, but if you keep being so nice to me, I might mistake your kindness for something else. She bowed and smiled and said, well then. Kellyanne said, but my lady, I have not made a wish yet. Jackie said, I told you, yes, he's not a god. Adelaide was returning, and Kellyanne was watching her. She stepped out, moving step by step. Adele stopped and said, phew. Jackie turned and said, are you okay? Please take a deep breath. Adelaide, feeling very sad and disappointed, said, how embarrassing. Jackie said, "My lady, don't tell me you proposed to that man out of the blue." Adele replied, "Why would I not have?" Jackie said, "Really? You did?" Adele said, "It's not what you think. I did not fall for him or anything. He just met all my conditions for an ideal marriage partner." Jackie sighed and said, "Looks were among those conditions, were they not?" Adele turned. Jackie laughed and said, "Not that I am questioning your judgment. Anyway, my lady, please don't be disappointed. He is like a stone statue. You can't marry a statue anyway." Adele said, "That makes me feel so much better, Jacqueline." Jackie said, "It might be best for you to give up now instead of wasting any more time here." Adele said, "Give up? Who, me? I am not going back home empty-handed." Adele flared and said, "I have to finish what I started. I can't back out now." Jackie replied, "But what if he's already taken?" "He's not." "What kind of girlfriend would just let a man like that rot away in a place like this?" "I guess you are right." Jackie said, "Well, do we return home for now? What if we encounter evil creatures along the way?" Adele stepped out and said, "You don't have to worry about that." Jackie said, "What? How do you do?" Adele glanced. Jackie said, "Oh, she seems to be up to something." The whooshing started. "I am sorry, Commander. I should not have let her in." Kellyan was sitting on a chair, with a table in front of him on which books were placed. He was writing something on a paper. A man stood before him and said, "I don't think you could have stopped her anyway." Kellyan replied, "It's fine." The man said, "It's still my fault." Kellyan flipped the paper and scrambled and said, "Was there anything else you needed to report to me? When is His Excellency returning?" "Oh, he won't be back for at least 2 weeks, since he's on duty for His Majesty. The Emperor has to stay put until he is told otherwise, as His Majesty's illness must be worse than expected." The man lost in thought and said, "This man impressed me." Lady Audley caused quite a stir in the temple, and yet he managed to deal with her without losing his calm. Kellyan was scribbling and writing. Moreover, he was able to kick her out without a second thought. Kellyan said, "How is everything on your end, Michael?" Michael replied, "The head nun checked the magic barrier herself. He says there is nothing to worry about." The man with red hairbrush stood behind Michael and said, "Did you even have to ask, Commander? You know we have got everything under control. Besides, who would ever dare try to infiltrate San Fidelo Temple?" Kellyan twitched the glasses. The man with red hair said, "By the way, is it true that the daughter of the Sergio family was here earlier, Your Grace?" The man in front of Kellyan said, "Yes, that's correct." Kellyan said, "It seems everyone recognized her thanks to her very unique eyes." The man with red hair said, "Wow, yeah, I heard she's got pink eyes, just like the gem on your pen, Commander." The pen was sparkling and shining. Michael said, "Hey, stop being so rude. Let's go talk outside. We are bothering the Commander." Kellyan said, "Is there something you can't talk about in front of me?" Michael said, "Commander, that's not what we—" The man with red hair smiled and said, "Of course not, Commander. Anyway, all the knights who were in training went crazy after catching a glimpse of her. I would not know because I am not from here, but I was told she is pretty famous in the Southern Territories." "Oh, now that I think of it, were you not from the Southern Territories too, Your Grace? Is her family that well known?" You could say the Sergios are a household name. The Sergio family had already been rich for generations, but the current head has taken the family business to new heights. It is said that all the money in the Southern Territories flows right into their pockets now." The man with red hair smacks and says, "Nice." He said, "Hey, what was that for?" Michael said, "I know what you are thinking. Come on, not only is she beautiful, she also comes from the richest family around. Ask any other knight. They will all feel the same way." The Kellyan was scribbling and writing and said, "I don't know what to do with you." The man with red hair smiled and said, "Whoever ends up marrying her will be so lucky. He will have everything he never wanted in life." Michael pushed him back and said, "Get out." The man with red hair shivered. Then Michael said, "What is it?" The man with red hair turned and glanced and said, "I just felt, never mind, all right, I will leave." Michael said, "You never know when to stop, do you? Did you even finish taking care of the evil creatures outside the temple gates yet?" The man with red hair sweated and said, "You see, I did the best I could, but there were just too many of them." Michael replied, "I told you, we need them all gone before more people start visiting the temple again. But they just don't die easily. They are tough little buggers. They get back to work, but if they end up attacking someone's carriage or something." The Kellyan halted with the pen. Michael looked back. "Kellyan," he said, "are there really that many of them?" Michael said, "Commander, I am going to have to ask you all to leave, including your grace." The man with red hair said, "Yes, sir." The door was clacked. "Please don't be upset, Commander. Since he is used to being outside on his own, he probably just feels stifled by the temple's life." The Kellyan was lost in thought. He was writing on paper. Then Kellyan rose, and Michael said, "Commander." Kellyan grabbed the sword. Michael said, "Are you going somewhere?" "Please allow me to go with you." Then Kellyan moved step by step towards the outside. Kellyan said, "No, I won't be long." Then Michael stepped outside and said, "Why are you here in such a hurry?" This is the first time I have seen such a grave look on his face since he returned from the ice cave. "Commander, I insist, please let me accompany you." Kellyan halted, and Michael said, "Kellyan said those are?" Michael said, "Pardon?" "Oh, you mean the people behind her grace? Based on their clothing, they must be volunteers serving her." Kellyan said, "I am aware of that." He stepped outside and said, "Your Grace." The woman said, "Oh, Commander, there you are." Kellyan said, "Are those?" The woman said, "Yes, these lovely ladies have volunteered to lend a hand at the temple. I am so thankful to have them, especially at a time like this when we could use some help. I'm sure, it's a blessing. Please come and introduce yourselves. This is the commander of the San Fidelio Knights." Adele fluttered and said, "Yes, Your Grace." She stepped forward, dressed in white, and gazed ahead in front of Kellyan. Kellyan asked, "What do you think you are doing?" Lady Adele responded, "I am but a humble servant of God named Agnes." She lifted and said, "It's an honor to meet you, Commander. May Agnes's blessings be with you always." She dazzled and said, "It seems we meet again." Jackie asked disappointedly, "Do we really have to stay here, my lady?" Adele said, "Call me Agnes." "Sister Jacqueline, please keep your voice down while you are inside the temple." Jacqueline slumped and said, "Ha?" Adele said, "And keep your chin up. Volunteers are just as much members of San Fidelo." Jackie said seriously, "Do you really have to do this?" Adele replied, "We don't have any other choice." She smiled and said, "I can't give up now. I still don't have a husband, and there is not much time left. Why would I leave a place filled with such good husband material? Staying here is my best bet." There was clamor and chatter everywhere. And people. Adele adamant and said, "I am not leaving here until I have completed my mission." Jackie replied, "But what about work? Everyone must be waiting for you." Adele grinned and looked towards Jackie and said, "Yeah, I can only hope nothing catastrophic happens during my absence. Otherwise, I am done for." Jackie lost in thought, and then said by holding the papers in her hands, "But thankfully I still have time before the next shipments arrive. I made sure to get up to date with all my work before leaving, and Jerox is there if anything happens anyway. Any other reason why he would have made a decent husband? I am anxious because this is the first time I have abandoned work, but my mission here is just as important. I can only take care of one thing at a time, so the best thing for me to do right now is focus on the task at hand." When the door was clacked, the woman looked back and said, "Oh, why are you not in your rooms?" The woman stepped toward Jackie. Adele bowed and said, "Your Grace." The woman smiled and then said, "Lift your head up. You don't need to bow to me." Adele shimmered and said, "I am just so thankful to you for giving us a chance to serve the temple." The woman said, "I never knew there was someone so devout in the Sergio family." Jackie thought, what's the matter with her? By holding the woman's hand, Adele said, "I have always dreamed of serving Anis, but my heavy workload never allowed it." The woman said, "I see. Is that how you received your baptismal name?" Adele replies, yes, father brought me here so I could receive the name Agnes. Although his primary goal was strengthening his ties with the biggest temples in the southern territories, the woman said, I am afraid that you might not be cut out for this kind of job. Adele smiled and said, I am willing to learn and do my best. Running a family business is not just about counting money. You must know how to deal with all sorts of situations and be assertive. I think I have gone through a lot more than most other women my age, and I like new challenges. Adele smiled and said, not to mention I am on a bit of a tight schedule. If Noila becomes the heir and I inherit the domain after her death, I will just be seen as her substitute for the rest of my life. I must avoid that, and I ensure I deserve to be the one and only heir. High positions only mean something if they are deservedly earned. I will take what's been rightfully mine from the very beginning. Moreover, Adelie stood in front of Kellyanne. I enjoyed seeing someone who seemed unshakable until now become so flustered. Adelie smirked, and a girl stepped toward Adele and said, Lady Adelaide, mind your manners when Her Grace is talking to you. The woman glared and said, is not that right? Please don't be so hard on her, Sister Rebecca. She is only smiling because she is happy to be here. Adele said, yes, of course. The woman said, we will give you more details tomorrow on what your tasks in the temple will be. For now, please rest up. You must be tired from your long journey. We are indebted to you, Your Grace. Nonsense. This is all part of Enes's will. Adele said, may the Empire continue to thrive under Ian's protection. Adelie bowed and took the woman's hand and placed it on her forehead. The woman stood with Rebecca and said, she is so quick to adapt. We don't see young ladies like that anymore, do we? Rebecca said, take a look at her eyes, Your Grace. She does not belong here. The woman said, Sister Rebecca. But she's from the Sergio's family, Your Grace. You don't judge people based on their background in this temple. Rebecca said, I am not judging her. Did you not hear about the meeting she had with the Knight Commander before coming to see you? This is not the first time we had someone offer to volunteer just to get closer to one of the knights. Moreover, she is a Sergio. You know how notorious her father is. Adele smiled. She is just acting. Her eyes are filled with ulterior motives. Rebecca said, I am sure she is up to no good. You can't tell me that you don't see this, Your Grace. The woman said, are you saying that you are disappointed in me? Rebecca clenched her hand and said, that's not. I apologize. I was worried you were giving her prefrontal treatment just because she's a Sergio. The woman said, you are right. The fact that she is from the Sergio family is exactly why I want her here. Rebecca said, pardon? The woman turned and said, think about it. How happy would Ines be if we managed to convert one of the most secular people there is? Don't forget what our duty is. We must put her on the right path. It's so peaceful. There was a rustle. Adele stood under the green tree and said, this is not all that bad. Jackie held the papers in her hands and said to Adelie, are we going to be okay? She did not seem to like us. I am talking about that nun. Adelie smiled and said, I think she was pretty nice. Adele said, if I were her, I would have tied me up and thrown me to a pack of lions. Jackie said, you have a point there. Adele replied, we have a roof over our heads, and we are being fed for free. We have it good. Now let's get to work. We owe it to them. She tapped her finger on the paper. Adele said, look, these are 2 sharp notes. We need to sing this part in the higher voice. There was chatter and clamor. Adele and Jackie were shocked. Jackie said, look, my lady. Adele replied, yeah, I am looking. I did not notice it before, but this place is so blessed. There was dazzling. Tell me about it. There Jackie and Adele glimmered. And Jackie said, I know I should not be saying this, but I think I will enjoy my time here. Adele replied, I am relieved to hear that. The boy with red hair is coming step by step. Jackie said to Adelie, look, someone's coming. He said, are you Lady Adelie of the Sergio family? Everyone's been talking about you. Adelie smiled and said, right now I am but a humble servant named Agnes. He smiled and said, I am Colonel Leonard, nice to meet you. Nice to meet you as well. This is Sister Jacqueline. The peoples were glimpsed and glanced at. Colonel said, "You are as beautiful as they say." I thought people were exaggerating, but I was wrong. Adele smiled and said, "May you do flatter me?" He said, "I heard you have volunteered to serve at the temple. If you need help with anything, feel free to let me know." Adele smiled and said, "Leonard, huh?" The colonel beamed and said if he managed to work his way up to the rank of colonel with that bright personality, he must both be talented and come from a respectable family. Adele smirked and said, "I am going to be staying here for at least a week, so I might as well get to know people." She grinned and said, "You are so nice. You must be so popular with everybody." "Haha, I don't mean to brag, but yes, I am." Colonel said, "Do you know where you have been assigned yet?" "I hope they will send you our way." Adele said to the knights, "That works for me. I am not sure yet. I don't have any control over where I go. There are a lot of buildings there. It's a big temple." Colonel was smiling. "The training center and dorms for prospective knights are over there, and if you go further down," Adele said, saving new information. Colonel looked back. "How do I get assigned to where the knights are?" He said, "Don't worry too much. You will probably end up at the library or the weapon warehouse. The workload is not too bad in those places." Adele smiled and said, "I will be happy wherever I am assigned. The library sounds nice, so the warehouse might be better. I could be reaching for something up high, and a knight would come from behind and grab it for me. Or I could get help with all the weapon names I don't know from a handsome knight." "Taking a break, Leonard?" Someone stepped, and Colonel looked back and said, "Commander," he stepped and said, "or I could end up being stuck with a cold knight like him." Kellyan stood with both Adele and Colonel. And he said, "I thought I could trust you with a simple training session." The colonel said, "I just thought that I would be nice to introduce myself to the new volunteers." Kellyan glanced. Adele looks toward Kellyan and says, "Good afternoon, Commander." Kellyan said, "Lady Adele." Michael glanced. Commander looks like. He is staring at a cat blocking a carriageway, and he does not know how to get it to move. Colonel said, "How do you know each other, by the way?" Michael was lost in thought. "Get back to work. We should not even be here." "Ah, come on." Adele grinned, and Kellyan said to Adele, "What are you smiling for?" She grinned and replied, "It's because NS spills my soul. Lady Adelaide, it's Agnes now." "When did you?" Kellyan said, "You think everything's just a game, don't you?" Adele was indignant and said, "What?" Adele said, "I respect your decision to turn down my proposal, but that was very rude of you just now." He replied, "So you are telling me your intentions were pure?" Adele said, "I always mean what I say when I make someone an offer. Every decision and action I make holds a great deal of weight as it moves large numbers of money and people. How could you think I see everything as a merry game?" Adele firmed and said, "And are you not the one who said that I should wait for this excellency to return? You don't know how important this is to me. You should try to be a little bit more compassionate toward others." Kellyan said, "Is that why you suddenly changed your name to Agnes?" Adele smiled and said, "What does that have to do with anything? Look at the statue talk. The temple is not a place where you come to play. Don't expect to have it easy here." Kellyan has been holding the papers in his hand and said, "Whatever it is you are planning on doing, my answer will always remain no." Adele said, "Hold on a second. What makes you think I am staying here to make you change your mind?" Kellyan stood silently, listening, and frowned. Then Kellyan said, "Because of you, Lady Adelaide." She is unyielding and said, "It's Agnes." Kellyan said, "Very well, because you, Agnes, proposed to me yesterday, and since I rejected you," and Adele said, "That's right. But that was yesterday. I thought we already moved on. I am too busy of a person to be dwelling on the past, and I have already forgiven you for dragging me out of the temple, so please don't mind me at all." Kellyan said, "Then what are you still doing here?" Adele turned and said, "I have to keep looking for my future husband, and I am sure I can find at least one knight in this temple who will be willing to spend the rest of his days with me." "I see. Oh, it seems you thought I was staying here to try and convince you again." Kellyan said, "I did not." Adele grinned and said, "That's a relief?" Adelie and Kaylin were standing together talking. Jackie and Michael were both standing, watching Kaylin and Adelie. Michael said, "Commander," while Jackie said, "My lady." In the temple, the sound of ding and dong echoed, and Michael said, "It's the morning prayer bell." There was whooshed. And Kellyanne reached and said, "I." Adelie said, "We are the voice of my Savior," and NS rings out. Kellyanne halted, and Adelie turned. And she said, "So must I go?" Adele stepped toward Jackie, and Jackie said, "My lady." Michael glanced and said, "She won't this round." "Are you okay, Commander?" Kellyanne clenched his fist and said, "Of course." Michael said, "According to the rumor going around, Her Grace has taken them directly under her wing." Kellyanne replied, "Why would she do such a thing?" He stared and said, "Is it because Lady Adele reminded Her Grace of the Sergio family's important financial contributions to the temple?" "Pardon?" "I would not be surprised if she used that as an excuse to threaten Her Grace." Michael said, "Oh, I don't think that's it. I heard she sent her carriage away after meeting with Her Grace." "She what?" "She seems pretty determined to stay here." Michael said, "Maybe Her Grace managed to move her heart." Kellyanne affirmed and said, "Not a chance." He said, "Lady Adelie is not impressionable." Michael said, "Pardon? How could he be so sure? He only just met her yesterday." Michael said, "Haha. Well, she won't survive long here anyway. I give her 1 or 2 days at most." Kellyanne asked, "What makes you think that?" "Because Sister Rebecca told me where Agnes is. I mean Lady Adelie has been assigned to." The girl clapped and said, "All right, that's it for today. And you 2 newcomers, please wait here for Sister Rebecca." Adelie glanced and said, "Thank you. May Anna's blessings be upon you." Many girls are standing in the temple. Jackie stepped toward Adelie and said, "Well, you were serious back there, my lady." Adelie replied, "What are you talking about?" "Oh, this part is hard to get right." Jackie said, "When you told the commander that you were not interested in him anymore, did you really mean that?" "Of course not. He is the perfect man for me. I am not interested in anyone else. My father will soon learn of his existence, and when he does, he will be disappointed if I did not manage to bring him back home." Jackie replied, "Then were you just trying to make him jealous or something?" Adelie replied by placing the paper on her mouth, and said that would have only worked if he liked me. "The problem is that he is not interested in women at all." Jackie said, "So why?" Adelie replied, "I want him to become suspicious of me. If I chased him around, oh okay, have fun. He would just ignore me. But what do you think will happen if I act flirty around his nights all the time? He would probably." Jackie said, "Keep a close eye on you." Adelie smiled and said, "Bingo. And it's just like yesterday was a complete disaster either. He seemed quite interested in what I had to tell him. He even had to hold himself back from laughing a few times. It was after I said, 'Don't you think someone like you belongs in the Imperial Palace?' That's when I noticed a sudden change in his attitude. But I don't understand." Jackie and Adelie stepped forward. Sister Rebecca stepped toward them and said, "Have you had a chance to go over to Hyman's sister Agnes?" Jackie said, "Oh, hello, sister." Rebecca leaned in and said, "Did you have any questions about it?" "Huh. What's she up to now?" Rebecca said, "Whatever it is, I'm ready for it. She's bound to reveal her true colors sooner or later. But I'll just speed up the process for her." Adele dazzled and said, "It just so happens this is one of my favorite songs, so I already know it by heart. I always feel at peace listening to it. I feel a step closer to Ennis already." Rebecca said, "I see. I did not think someone from the Sergio family could be such a devout believer." Adele replied, "My father would always sing this song by my side to put me to sleep. Father, will Ennis really bless us if we sing this hymn?" Adele was sleeping, and her father sat beside her. And he said, "I don't know. I am sure Ennis already has his hands full with other more urgent matters." Adele replied, "So what's the point of singing this?" He said, "That's why you should try singing to multiple different gods. If you do, I am sure at least one of them will reply." Adele was listening quietly. "This is how I ended up learning the hymns of the San Fidelo Temple, the Medina Temple, and even the Athena temple. I did not want to leave a single god out. Adelie was asleep. Rebecca said to Adelie, "Then you must also be familiar with the hymn Sunset over San Fedelo. We usually sing that one during the evening prayer." Adelie smiled and said, "Of course." "When the sun falls below the mountain peaks," Rebecca said, "I am afraid that's a hymn from the Medina temple." Adele smiled and pointed her finger and said, "Yes, I was just thinking how they both sounded so similar, especially that part about the sun falling below the mountains. This is one of the downsides of serving multiple gods." Rebecca said, "You may have a point there, Sister Agnes." Adele laughed, "Haha." And she said, "Thank you for being so patient with me. By the way, I realize I have so much to learn." Rebecca said, "Oh, don't mention it." She clenched her hands and said, "It's the intention that matters, don't you think? Speaking of which, I found the perfect place for you. I am sure you will be able to learn a lot there." Jackie sighed and cried and said, "My lady, she is trying to get us to be quiet, is she not?" Jackie was sniffling. Adele said, "Sure, be quiet. She can hear us." Rebecca whined and said, "That's a lot of dishes. Is everything okay? You don't look so good." The fruit baskets were heaped. No wonder she did not get upset even after I mixed the hymens up. Adele composed herself and said, "Oh no, I feel fine." Rebecca said, "I thought you would be perfectly suited for this kind of task, Sister Agnes. You see, the knight tended to have a big appetite." Adele stepped toward Rebecca. Adelie stared ahead. Is she shocked? I wonder if she's ever even washed a single dish in her life. It's not that I don't feel guilty for doing this to her, but I can't just let someone so disrespectful of the temple go around as she pleases. The Sergios are notorious for being a dysfunctional family and having contradictory religious views. All 3 children were born to different moms, and they were each baptized separately. Her Grace may pretend not to care about this kind of thing, but I do. I will teach this little girl an unforgettable lesson. Rebecca said, "I'm not sure you'll be able to finish by the end of the day. You should get started." Adele replied, "What? What about dinner then?" Rebecca responded, "You'll be able to eat once you've completed this task. Please let me know if you decide to quit. I can always call our carriage to take you back home." Adele listened quietly, whimpering softly. "Master Killian first came to San Fedelo 4 years ago, the same year there was a big fire. And it has now been half a year since he returned from his 3 years of training at the ice cave. Given that the dust has settled since the Great Battle of Tillin, he will start appearing in public more often. It's very important for us to promptly dispose of anyone who tries to approach the holy place with ulterior motives. Once people find out that even a rich, beautiful woman like Lady Adelie was turned down by him, no one will ever again dare try to seduce the commander of the San Fedelo Knights." Rebecca said to Adelie, "Since you wanted to serve the knights of this temple so much, this is going to be the perfect opportunity for you." Adelie replied, "Of course, I will do whatever you demand of me. May I ask you one thing though?" Rebecca said, "Oh, what is it?" "Oh, don't tell me you don't know how to wash dishes. I should have known." Adelie smiled and said, "No, I just wanted to ask you if this is really a task for only 2 people. There are 467 dishes, 440 knives, and 270 cups in here. It hardly seems like a task for just the 2 of us." Rebecca replied, "Well, that depends on." "Hold on, were you counting those dishes while I was giving you instructions?" "I am sorry, it's an old habit I have." Adele was laughing and said, "Oh, don't worry. If this were any other place, I would have thought that you were trying to bully me. But I know that can't possibly be the case since this is a sacred temple." The Rebecca replied, "You are right." Adele clenched her hands and said, "Whatever you wish is my command, sister." She paused, a faint gleam in her eyes. How could I ever question someone so devoted to the technique and teachings of Ennis? Rebecca shouted and said, "All right, that's enough talking. The dishes won't wash themselves, will they?" Adelie smiled and said, "Yes, sister. I appreciate your kindness, by the way. If I ever get the honor of meeting the Ennis, one day I will be sure to speak favorably about you to him. You will too, right, Jackie? Jackie sighed and said, "Oh yes, of course." Rebecca turned back. Adele said, "Well then, see you later." She is so easy to read. Adele dragged and said one thing for sure is that she would not do well in the business world. Jackie pulled Adele and said, "Why even bother talking to her? She is obviously trying to give us a hard time. What a mess. There must be at least 3 days' worth of dishes." Adele replied, "Yeah." Jackie said, "How can you stay so calm at a time like this? I bet you she will do everything in her power to make us quiet." Elle replied, "Well, there sure are a lot of dishes to be cleaned. But what do we do now? We should have just yelled at her and walked out while we had the chance. Why would we do that? I don't blame her for any of this." Jackie said, "What's wrong with you? How can you be so patient?" Adele replied, "I am just saying I understand where she is coming from. I am not trying to be nice. I just don't hate Rebecca that much. One of the peak perks of coming from a rich family is that I did not have to run into too much trouble with the other people while growing up. With the expectations of the whole Xerox situation, my life has pretty much been a breeze. Why should I waste precious energy hating on others when I don't even have enough time to spend on the things I want to do? Compared to all those evil people trying to rip each other's heads off, Rebecca's nothing." Jackie replied, "We should have at least put some money aside before sending the carriage back. That way we could have paid some people to help us with our work." Adele said, "You know Rebecca would not have let us do that." Jackie replied, "Do you really not have any? What are you doing? This will get in the way." Adele begins to tie her hair. Jackie asked, "Are you really going to do this, my lady? You have never touched dirty dishes once in your entire life." Adele smiled and said, "What makes you think so? It's a starry night, people are eating, and there is noise all around." Colonel said, "Wow, I have never seen so many people in here." Michael replied, "Keep quiet." "Oh, what a ruckus. I kind of like how it's lively for once, if you say so." Michael sighed and said, "All this because of one woman? How pathetic." Michael turned and said, "I bet you they are more interested in trying to get her attention than focusing on her training." And he said, "Wow, the commander's here." Michael said, "Commander, what are you?" Kellyanne replied, "Is there any reason I should not be here?" Michael said, "That's not what I meant. It's just that." Kellyanne glanced and said, "Good." Michael and the colonel are standing with food in their hands, stepping slowly forward. "What just happened?" Kellyanne leaned back in his chair, a woman seated beside him. A meal was laid out on the table before them. He frowned slightly and said, "Why didn't you tell me the commander was here? How was I supposed to know he never eats with the others?" Colonel said, "Do you think he is also competing for Lady Adelie's attention?" Michael replied, "Hey, watch your mouth." The colonel said, "Think about it. I mean, he is a man too." Kalana laughed and said, "It's not every day such a beautiful woman shows up here. See, he is obviously trying to discourage the other cannons from approaching her." Kellyanne sat silently, lost in thought, the untouched food still resting before him. "I don't know about that. Intimate dating. I don't see it as a warning toward other Knights." Michael said, "But rather the opposite." "Huh." The woman said, "Where is Sister Agnes, by the way?" "She needs to eat too," Rebecca said. "But she must not have completed her task yet." "Is that too?" Rebecca glanced. "It must be taking her longer since she is not used to this sort of work." Kellyanne was silently lost in thought. "Just as I thought, he does not seem interested in Lady Adelie at all." Rebecca laughed and said she comes from a rich family, so it makes sense that she's never done a chore in her entire life. The colonel said, "That's too bad. I was hoping to see her during dinner. I wonder if I should go help her." Rebecca replied, "Colonel Leonard, Sister Agnes, I mean Lady Adelie, and Lady is only fulfilling her duties as a volunteer of the temple." Rebecca flinched and cleared her throat. "Ahem! And who knows? Maybe she's hiding her face on purpose." The colonel narrowed his eyes. "What do you mean?" he asked. They were both seated at the dining table. "I am sure she is used to eating only the most luxurious foods. The food here cannot possibly suit her taste. Rebecca said, I heard the Sergio family have wine and champagne fountains at their parties. Kalana replied, Really? That seems wasteful. Not only that, they have towers of cake taller than people, and they serve entire fruit trees for dessert. Rebecca said, I still can't believe someone so extravagant ended up volunteering at a place like this. I am not going to stop her, but I wonder how long she will last. Rebecca said to Kellyanne, Are you done eating, Commander? Someone is approaching, their footsteps echoing. Adele walked in, carrying a dish of food in her hands. The more I hear about her, the harder it is for me to believe all these stories. Just how rich is she? Kellyanne looked up, startled. Can it even be expressed in words? Rebecca glanced sideways and smirked. Those must be the leftovers. I've got plenty more stories about the Sergio family's indulgent lifestyle, as many as there are potatoes on this plate. She walked over to Rebecca with a plate full of potatoes in her hands. Rebecca waved the offer away with a flick of her wrist and said politely, No thanks, I don't want any. Rebecca flinched and Sadie, I will gladly have some. She turned around and froze. Adele was standing right there in front of her, holding the same plate of potatoes. Adele smiled and Sadie, I hope you don't mind if I help myself. Is anyone sitting here? She laughed softly, the plate still in her hand. Adele sat down slowly, picking up a soft potato from the plate and gently squishing it between her fingers, absent-mindedly. Just then, Kellyanne halted in front of her. She looked up, surprised, and said, Oh, I thought you were leaving, Commander. Kellyanne shook his head slowly. No. Kellyanne quietly took a seat on the chair beside the woman. He placed his plate down, and I haven't finished eating yet. Adele laughed gently. I see. Take your time. She added with a teasing smile. He's making it seem like I'm here to seduce the other knights. She bit into a potato and grinned. Yummy! This potato is so good. Hard work makes everything taste better. If no one were watching, I'd just wolf all the food down. At the dining table nearby, Michael and the Colonel exchanged glances. Adele grinned and said, Maybe it's because they grew at a high altitude. But these potatoes are so big and fluffy. They are, yes, they taste amazing. Adele twitched. I am lying, of course, but they will at least keep me from starving. I feel like my arms are about to fall off. I can't believe she tried to make me do this worth of dishes without even feeding me. I bet you her plan was to make sure the commander and I would not run into each other, but I was not going to let that happen. Colonel laughed and said, Ha ha, hearing you say that makes the potatoes we eat every day suddenly seem special. Adele smiled and said, I am only telling the truth. You are so blessed to be able to eat these every day. Colonel laughed and said, Ha, you must be kidding. Adele said, Sister Rebecca, you don't have to pretend so hard. We all know what family you come from already. You don't have to act like you enjoy this kind of food. This kind of food, there's no way it suits your expensive plate. Adele said, Why should I pretend? I don't see why you look down on these precious potatoes. Adele picks up the potato in her hand and says it takes a lot of effort to grow these, from picking out the right seeds and finding good soil to making sure they get enough water and sunshine until they are ready for harvest. Rebecca grinned and said, Is it so? You really like them that much? Do you? Adele swirled the glass and said, Of course, potatoes are so versatile, so you can use them in so many dishes. Adele smiled and said, Such as soups, purees, salads, and even bread, not to mention they go great with steak. If I were her, I would have already slapped me. Adele said, Oh, and while we are at it, you seem to have a bit of a misunderstanding about my life. Did you say we had wine and champagne and fountains? Rebecca said, Are you accusing me of lying? I heard it directly from someone who attended one of your parties. Adele replied, Oh no. I just wanted to correct you, they are waterfalls, not fountains. My father goes through the trouble of making them himself. If you are going to talk behind my back, you might as well do it right. What are you bragging about right now? Adele smiled and said, "Yes, I am, because whichever wine we choose for the waterfall, I guarantee it will become the top-selling wine the following year. The more people try the wine, the more the industry flourishes. The wine you have in your hand just happens to be the one we introduced at our party 2 years ago. Do you like it?" Rebecca was surprised and said, "What are you?" Adelie stripped and peeled off the potato and said, "Oh, you are right about the fruit trees though. That's exactly how we serve them. But please bear in mind that we donate all the leftovers to those in need instead of letting the food go to waste." Rebecca said, "Have you not heard the saying that it's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter the kingdom of God?" Adele replied, "You don't have to remind me of that, thank you. I could make a golden needle bigger than the size of this hall whenever I want." Adele rose and stepped forward and said, "But I simply choose not to." "Not only would that be a big waste of money," Adele beamed, "but it would not be in line with Ian's wishes either." Colonel laughed loudly. Michael said, "Don't laugh." Colonel said to Adele, "Are you already done eating? Why don't you have some bread?" Adele said, "I was going to, but there was not any left when I got here." "Oh, then why don't you have some of mine?" "You can have mine as well." Adele replied, "It's okay. I will just come earlier next time." Kalian was sitting with his hand resting on his head and said, "Is there anything else we can do for you, my laddie?" Adele grinned and said, "Just make sure not to leave any food behind, because I am the one who will have to wash all your plates." Adele glanced, and she rose and said, "I don't bite you now. He seems worried I am up to no good with the other knights, when in fact he is my target." Adele smiled gently, gave a graceful bow, and said, "Well then, I will see everyone later." The crowd stirred. People stood up startled. A quiet stomp echoed through the room. A girl whispered, "Did you see that?" A boy replied, "I did." Kalian stood silently, eyes steady. Then he said in a low voice, "She worries me. Let's pray for her." The woman sitting beside Kalian leaned closer and asked, "What's wrong, Commander Kalian?" It only took one person leaving for the entire hall to be plunged into silence. Adele was already walking away. Kalian looked down, searching for words. "How do I explain this feeling?" he murmured. Then, after a pause, he said, "Perhaps I was just too rowdy in here." The woman said to Kilian, "I did not mind at all." Kilian replied, "But the woman said rowdy, huh? That's an interesting word choice. Maybe you should try to be more honest with yourself, Commander." Kilian said, "I only speak as someone who is in charge of maintaining the peace in this temple." The woman replied, "That loaf in your hand. Who is it for?" Kilian flinched. "He has bread in his hand. What's this doing in my hand? Were you also trying to offer you bread to Agnes?" "It was for you, of course." The woman said, "Oh my." Kilian replied, "You need to make sure you eat well." The woman said, "Really? This is a first. The older you get, the more nutrients your body needs to stay healthy." The utensils were sparkling and shining. "You really finished washing all these?" Rebecca turned and said, "I hope you are not trying to fool me. I was not born yesterday. If the plates are not perfectly clean." Adele gleamed and shined and said, "As you can see, they are all sparkling clean." Adele was holding a plate in her hand. Rebecca is searching for plates, fumbling around, and says, "That's impossible." Jackie and Adelie saw Sokka eat the food Adelie brought back for her. There was clutter. Maybe I should not have done such a throwaway job so she would have something to nitpick at. Actually, never mind. I could put up with her if she was just acting a bit busy. Adelie shook, but her ultimate goal is to chase me out of the temple. I guess the education I received as a nun here turned me into a bit of a perfectionist. I can't help it, I like a job well done. It's a force of habit. Adele tilted and said, "By the way," she pointed a finger towards Rebecca and said, "What do you think about building a custom cupboard to put under the window?" Rebecca said, "What?" Adele replied, "I think we also need a new brush for washing the dishes. The one we have right now is too old." Rebecca yelled and said, "I never asked for your opinion." Rebecca turned and said she has a pretty strong voice. I have nothing to gain from trying to argue with her. Adelie was smiling. Considering the head nun did nothing but watch when Rasika and I had a bit of a quarrel earlier, she must have given Rebecca permission to do whatever she wants with me. I would not be fair to all the other nuns if I received preferential treatment, so instead she must be trying to test me by letting Rebecca, who seems to have the strongest dislike for me, order me around. She is trying to make a sort out of our differences on our own. The woman with the ponytail was smiling. Ha ha ha. She is the head nun for a reason. She knows what she's doing. Adele smiled and said, anyway, since I am done with my task, it's time to go see the knights again. So, I am free to go now. Rebecca turned and said, what? Adele replied, I did everything you asked me to do, and since dinner time is not over yet, there are not any new or dirty plates to wash. Rebecca said, there are other tasks waiting for you. Pardon. Adele was smiling. Rebecca grinned and said, what will it be this time? I have mixed feelings about Adele's smile. Rebecca replied, I like the suggestions you shared with me earlier. Adele said, what suggestions? You said we needed a new brush for the dishes. Adele said, oh, I should have seen this coming. I will have to keep my mouth shut from now on. Rebecca said, well, if you are not too keen on the idea, you can always. Adele replied, where should I go? Adele sighed. Rebecca said, what do you mean? Adele said, let's not waste time with this. Rebecca asked, what? Adele said, tell me where I should go to get a new brush. Please and thank you. It is a starry night with lush green trees, and a stream is flowing through the mountains. The sound of the water is audible. Kaylin is standing by the stream, lost in thought, recalling Adelie's words. They are waterfalls, not fountains. My father goes through the trouble of making them himself. Placing his hand on his head, he sighed, I must be going crazy. Kalyan lifted his hand and said, I'm usually not one to have my head in the clouds, but I can't seem to get a hold of myself. She's not even a suitable partner for me. She's the most secular, extravagant. He recalls Adelie's words. Let's get married, he said, and a brazen woman I have never met. He turned and said, I don't know, whatever. She's really fearless or just straightforward. He stepped forward. Remember, Commander, you must remain vigilant until you get your hands on that. Kalyan was lost in thought. He clenched his hand and said, 13 more days. Just 13 more days until His Excellency returns. I just need to hang in there a little longer. He stomped and said this should be nothing compared to the Chalahan ice cave. I should not forget I managed to survive 3 years inside the hell. Even if that woman were to get in my way or try to seduce me with her silver tongue or flirtatiously smile at me with her pink eyes. There was rustled. He stepped and halted and said, Ack. Adele was walking step by step, and she said, my shoulders are killing me. Kalyan saw him, and he became quiet. Lord, what have I done to deserve this? Adele said, I can't stand it anymore. How am I supposed to finish this by? She said, Kalyan said to Adelie, please watch your step. Adele huffed and said, what are you doing outside this late, Commander? Kalyan replied, I would like to ask you the same thing. Adele stared and said, this is an interesting turn of events. I am just here to pick 3 routes to use for making a new brush. I never expected to run into him here. Kalyan stared. I almost feel like I should be thanking Sister Rebecca for this. Adelie was flustered. And she said, just to make sure there's no misunderstanding. I swear I was not following you or trying to run into you on purpose. Kalyan replied, I would not even have thought of that, but since you mention it, I expected her to act as surprised or at least a bit shameless as usual. Adelie said, I am telling the truth. She smiled and said, but she genuinely seems flustered. I was only trying to dig up some roots to use for making a brush to wash the dishes with. Kalyan twitched and said, why are you not with your maid? Adelie replied by smiling, she's had to go through enough trouble because of mine already, so I told her to take it easy. Anyway, I had better hurry if I hope to finish this by tonight. She raised her hand, and he's holding up roots. Adelie glanced and said, who? Commander? Adele wiped her mouth and said, "What's the matter? Is there something on my face?" Callian replied coldly, "Don't you know how dangerous it is out here at night?" "Oh, I am sure I have told you about the evil beasts already." There was a whoosh. Adele said, "While it's true Sister Rebecca may not like me, I sincerely doubt she normally put me in a dangerous situation." Callian replied, "Have you not yet realized why she's doing all this to you?" Adele laughed. "Ha ha ha, it sounds like he's questioning my intelligence." Adele sighed. And she said, "What about you, Commander? Don't you realize why I am putting up with all this?" Callian said, "Because..." Adele replied, "You think I am playing around, but I am serious about this whole thing. Like I said before, this is really important to me. My whole future depends on this." Callian glanced and became quiet and then said, "Is that why you are doing all the dirty work?" Adele tilted and said, "What's picking up roots?" She turned and said, "I am willing to do just about anything. If I am told I have to move an entire mountain, I will do just that." Adele flicked back and said, "You don't think I can?" Callian replied, "Actually, I know you can." He flapped. "I have not known this woman for long, but I know she is not the type to give up easily. Her determination is admirable. It's just too bad it's being used for something selfish. She would have made a good knight." Adele moved, stepped and stepped. Callian said, "But you don't enjoy doing this, do you?" Adele replied, "Of course not." Callian said, "So why?" Adele replied, "Just because I don't want to do something, I don't mean I can't or should not do it. If it's something I have to do anyway, I might as well do it in good spirits. Both are walking step by step." Adele said, "Even if I don't become the Adele heir, I can still make a living one way or another. But that's not the case for many of the people who work for me. Their livelihoods depend on me. That's why I feel a great responsibility." Adele was walking ahead, talking as she went. Callian said, "I see." Adele looked toward him and said, "What's with that look?" Callian became quiet. Adele said, "Have you not ever had to do something only because you had to?" Callian said, "No." Adele smiled and said, "Oh, all right then. It makes sense. He seems to enjoy his position too much. I could not imagine him forcing himself to do anything." "That is," Callian glimmered and glowed. "A dark night." And Lady Adele said, "Oh, it's getting late. Sister Rebecca must be waiting for me to come back before she goes to sleep. I had better. Her hands are empty." Adele's basket was taken by Callian, and Adele said, "Commander, what is he doing?" Callian said, "Let's go." Adele, shocked, said, "Wait." Callian replied, "Didn't you say it was getting late?" Adele said, "I did, but seriously, what's going on?" They stepped forward. "If it were any other man, I'd think he was into me. But be aware," Adele said, "be aware that if you're too nice to me, I might get the wrong idea." Callian replied, "I don't think it matters what I say, you'll get the wrong idea no matter what." Adele said, "No, that's not. Actually, I guess you're right. He got me." Adele smiled, coughed, and said, "I should not forget he is a knight. Chivalry is only one of the..." Adele was glowing. Callian became quiet. Adele said, "Huh! Did he just..." Callian went away from Adele, and Adele called to Callian, "Hey!" She walked step by step and said, "Wait, you are walking too fast." He replies, "You are the one who's walking too slow." They reached the temple. Adele was fuming with anger. "He won't even let me look at his face again. Every time I catch up to him, he just walks faster," she said. Adele stomped her foot, and Callian strode ahead. He heard it. "And if I try to let him go on without me, he just stops and waits," she added. "Here, this is yours. Now go to bed." "Thank you." "Never mind," she said coldly. "It must have been my imagination. I should be happy he didn't try to kill me out in those woods, considering all the trouble I caused him." Callian said to Adele, "Be careful next time. You don't know when a beast might appear out of nowhere." Adele replied, "Okay, You be careful too, Commander. Kalyan said, Are you really worrying about me right now? You are funny. Do you really think I am afraid of a little? Adelie laughed, ha ha ha, and said, No, not the beasts. I am talking about me. Be careful of me. She points the finger toward herself. Adelie shimmered and said, You can't possibly be thinking that those evil beasts are more dangerous than I am, right? What makes him think that I can get through to him? It can't hurt to try, can it? Kalyan said, What are you? Adelie replied, I am just kidding. She turned and looked back and said, And don't worry, you have already made it clear that you are not interested in me. I got the message. Adelie rushed and said, Well, then have a good night. There was the whoosh. And Kalyan looks continuously at Adelie. Michael said, Commander, I have been looking for you. Kalyan looked back and said, Michael? Michael glanced and thought, what was he looking at? And he said, You should come inside, it's getting chilly. Kalyan turned and said, You go in first. Michael asked, Where are you going? Let me. Kalyan replied, You don't have to wait for me. I think I need to go wash up again. May I have some more potatoes, Sister Agnes? Me too, please. There was clamor and chatter. Rebecca huffed and said, Like you ever enjoyed eating potatoes? Seriously, just who is this woman? Adele smiled and, holding the glass and dishes in her hands easily said, I can do this too. Rebecca thought it's been 3 days already, and she still has not failed in any of the tasks I have given her. Rebecca caught her head and sighed and said, Something needs to be done about her. Can't anyone else in the Holy Temple see she does not belong here? There must be at least one person here who feels the same way I do, right? She stepped toward the door. Kalyan said, Yes, of course. Rebecca shook her head and said, There you are, Commander. Kalyan said, Sister. Rebecca replied, I was wondering why you looked like you were in a bad mood. It's because of Lady Adele, isn't it? Kalyan replied, I knew Kalyan would be the most likely person to understand how I feel about her. Adele grinned. How can all these knights act so furiously? Such behavior is disrespectful to what the gods deserve. Indeed, this is unacceptable. Right, I knew you would understand, Commander. I don't know how she did it, but she seems to have done something to them. It's like they are under her spell. Adele was grinning. They have all lost their minds. Rebecca said, Tell me about it. Even the other nuns seemed to be infatuated with her. She was smiling by putting her hand on her mouth. Sister Agnes and other girls said she is so kind. Rebecca turned and said, We need to set things straight. What do you think we should do, Commander? Kalyan said, Have everyone sent into the Callahan Ice Cave. Rebecca flinched and said, But what about the nuns? I don't think it's appropriate to have any woman sent there. Kalyan became silent. Commander. Kalyan said, How pathetic. Rebecca asked, What? Of course, it's pathetic, all right. I am sure someone has been secretly helping her all this time. How else would she have completed every task I gave her? Rebecca put her fist on her chin and said, I can't let this slide. Kalyan replied, So what are you planning to do with her? Rebecca said, I will have somebody keep a close eye on her. That way I will know if she is up to no good. Who? The nuns are too soft for the task, and the only knight I can think of who is impartial enough for this job, Rebecca said, placing her fist on her mouth. Major General Michael, I beg to differ. Rebecca asked, Pardon? I thought you were supposed to be on my side. There was a sparkle and shine in the room. And then Kalyan said, Michael is too much of a pushover. We need someone more assertive for this job. While other knights are not afraid to use their speed to take out many enemies at once during battle, Michael only fights with one enemy at a time out of respect for them. Rebecca said while smiling, Oh, I see. So that's what you meant. Then I will ask the brave Colonel Leonard. Are you sure? Kalyan asked, Are you sure about that? Rebecca stood beside Kalyan and said, Right. Adelie was standing in front of them with some strange-looking person. First in line. There, a clamor and chatter began. Then we can ask one of the prospective candidates still in training. Michael and Colonel were smiling. They are too weak, alright then, but what about Bishop Samuel? Don't you think he's too old to be chasing after somebody? Rebecca said to Killian. Who else could we ask? We can't just let her have her way. Killian replied, You are right. Look at how certain he is. He shows no mercy when it comes to maintaining order. Rebecca hid her face with her hand. He is different from everyone else. She smiled and said, Well, in that case, the Callian replied, I guess I have no choice but to keep an eye on her myself. Did Rebecca ask you? Callian replied, Am I not the one in charge of everything at the temple during His Excellency's absence? Rebecca said to Callian, But you must have your hands full already. Callian replied, Are you doubting my competence? Rebecca said, No at all. She said, He is right. Who could be more capable than the commander himself? Not only is he able to remain unmoved by a woman, unlike the other knights, but he also knows how to be strict at all times. He is as victorious and emotionless as an unmelting glacier. Rebecca said, If you are the one keeping an eye on her, I will definitely have less to worry about. Killian became quiet. And then he glanced and said, I bet you she won't be smiling for long. You mean she is like she is now? Adele is smiling. You have a letter from home, my lady. Bring it to me. Adele holds an envelope in her hand. It's from Jerox. Adele opened the letter and Jackie said, What's wrong? Did something happen back to the domain? Adele said, Well, by reading the letter. Jerox wrote a letter that I was happy to be told my father's return had been delayed due to the sudden bridge collapse. But P.S. Noila is really worried about you. She thinks that you were so shocked to hear about us that you decided to become a nun. Are you okay? Adele was reading the letter. That's a slay, little Minix. Noila is crying in the front of Jerox. I bet you she pretended to be all sad to get Jerox to ask about me. But she needs to worry more about herself, if you asked me. She does not even have that much time left to live. It's quite sad she has to behave like this. Maybe I should have just let her meet the new female protagonist. Adelie was reading the letter. I stopped her from going to the capital so she would not cause any trouble. But now she has no one else but me to unleash her evil energy on. I feel a little guilty for not allowing her billionairely to live up to its full potential. But she remains the antagonist, so I can't let my guard down. Who's to say she won't try stabbing me in the back at the very last minute? Not on my watch. Jackie asked, Are you okay, my lady? Adele replied, Yes, of course. This does not surprise me at all. Adelie placed her hand on her mouth and said, Ugh. And Jackie leaned toward Adelie. Jackie was shocked after reading the letter and said, Whoa. P.S. Caden seemed upset not to hear from you for days. He said he will just wrap things up and return. What does that mean? Adele sighed by putting her hand on her mouth, and Jackie shivered. There was a tremble, and Jackie said, Oh no, Master Caden is coming back. Jackie and Adelie stood beside the dining table, and Jackie said, If he finds out that you are at this temple. Adele replied, They have got to be kidding me. She crumpled the letter and said, It's almost like they all want to see me dead. Adele raised the knife in her hand and said, I need to start speeding things up. I can't be peeling potatoes forever. Adele slices and cuts. Jackie started crying and said, Wow, slow down. You will hurt yourself, my lady. Jackie said, I don't know how to say this. Adele replied, Then don't say it. Jackie said, But? Adele said, I know what you are going to say. You want me to go after someone else, a man who would be easier to win over. Jackie replied, All the knights here are dying to get your attention. So do you really have to go far? Adele is peeling the potatoes. And said, Yes, it's got to be him, no matter what. Jackie replied, When did you become so obsessed with him? You were not like this just a few days ago. I never realized you cared about looks so much. Adele said, That's not it. I look at everything. She said about Kellyan. I have only known him for a few days, but that was enough to see that his values and his lifestyle are completely opposite to mine. He is a man with integrity, maturity, and manners. It all sounds good, but it's like he collected all the tradits, and they don't make you money. But despite all that, he did not make fun of me. Adele is cutting the potato. On the night we walked back to the temple together, he listened to everything I had to say. He is not the type to pander to me just because I am Sergio, but he still treated me with respect. Not to mention, he seemed to smile faintly at me. Adele said calmly, and even if that smile never happened, at least I know we are capable of communicating. Isn't that the key to a successful marriage? Also, from what I have gathered so far by interacting with the other knights, there's no one more competent, sound-minded, and good-looking than Commander Killian. Since your work in the kitchen is done, it's time to assign you to your next station. What do you want me to send you? Adele said I get to choose. Rebecca replied, you wanted to work with the knights, did you not? Jackie stood with them. Adele smiled and said, has she lost it? Pardon? Rebecca grinned and said, it's a very lively place. I am sure you will enjoy working there, Lady Agnes. I should have known. No wonder she seemed so excited. It is daytime, the sun is shining, the trees are lush, and the leaves are flying in the air. Like Rebecca said, this place is very lively and filled with high-spirited men. But it's not what I had in mind. Not at all. Wow, you are so pretty. The children said to Adele, will you be staying with us starting today? They chattered and clamored. Callian shouted at the children and said, get back to the training now. Adele said, so it was the commander's idea to have me assigned here? The Callian smiled and said, so you could say that. I think we should assign Sister Agnes to the weapon storeroom. She must be good at inventory management. Give her work experience. Callian said, no, it gets too busy with knights constantly working in and out of there. Callian is wiping the sword to clean it. What about the library then? Most of the young knights don't go there. Kellen was sitting on the chair, wiping his sword, and Michael was standing in front. Kellen said, but what about the older knights? They are still men. Michael said, If you want to play it safe, the only place I can think of is the squire's living quarters. They are all so young. The sword is halted on the table. The Killian became quiet. Michael thought I would take his silence as a sign of approval. Michael stood with Adelie, and he said, you won't have too much to do here, Sister Agnes. You just have to keep an eye on the boy you see over there. You mean that the kid is frantically swinging his sword? Michael became quiet. And in front of them, a kid was swinging the sword. Michael laughed and said he should not cause you any trouble. He already completed some self-discipline and mind training courses with the priests. The kid was starting to cry and said, wah! Nero just hit me. There was a whimper, and Adele leaned on Kid and said, you are right. I am sure I will have nothing to worry about. He seems perfectly disciplined. Michael said and laughed, ha ha ha, I had better get going. Adele sat down and said to the kid, first things first, take a deep breath. The kid ran, stepped and stepped. And the kid said, who are you? Get away from me. I can do this without anyone's help. Adele said, really? So he is the annoying little troublemaker around here. The kid said in anger, hey, did you not hear me? You don't know who I am. Adele replied, no, not yet. The kid said, well, you are in for a shock. I run this place. No priest or nun even dares talk back to me. You had better watch out. Adele said, ha ha ha, okay, so he is just another spoiled brat. Adele leaned on the kid and said, hey kid, I know you don't know me, but can't you tell why I am here? The kid flinched and said, what? Adele replied, I am here for the same reason as you. The kid was listening quietly. Adele said, what, you thought you were the only troublemaker? The kid came in anger and said, I don't know what you are talking about. Adele replied, you might be too young to understand. You think you are special, don't you, Nero? You think the whole world revolves around you, right? It feels like no one understands you and... The kid jumped and said, who are you? The child is upset. And he said, who do you think you are? My father won't stand for this, you know. I daily beamed and said neither would my father trust me. You would not want to meet him. The kid came in anger and said, arg. Adele replied, wow, you really have got to learn some manners. The kid said, "You have no right to tell me what to do. Even my parents do." Adele flinched and said, "I wonder why your parents decided to send you off to a place like this. Of all the places they could have sent you, they picked one of the most dangerous ones in the world." The boy shouted and said, "It's dangerous. Don't tell lie to me. Why should believe you?" "I believe you." Adele smiled and said, "You really think I am lying? Oh, I know why you ended up here. Your mom was always lying and begging you to behave yourself. And your father spent very night tucked away in his studies drinking by himself, right? And he would just sigh whenever he saw you would, not he?" The kid started listening attentively to Adelie. He said, Yeah. The kid asked, "Do you know my parents?" And Adele replied, "I got you, punk." Adele said, "I knew it. No wonder they decided to send you to a place like this." The kid shouted and said, "I still don't get it. Why did they send me here? I told you, this is one of the most dangerous places in the world." Adele said, "Whether you get eaten up by an evil beast or just go missing one day for whatever reason, I won't make a difference to anyone. Neither you nor I are wanted here anyway." The kid shuddered, and he pointed a finger toward Adele. He said, "Are you threatening me? You are supposed to be a grown-up." Adele growled and said, "If you don't put that finger down right now, I will break it in half. I may be overdoing it, but he's too spoiled. I need to show him he can't get his way all the time." The kid was starting to cry. If someone does not set him straight, he will grow into a real tyrant. "We both come from rich families, so there's no reason for us to be enemies," Adele said to Kid Nero. "You remind me of my younger siblings." Nero smiled, and he said, "I guess you are no different from everyone else at this temple." She said, putting her hand on Nero's shoulder, "You all tell me the same thing. I'm sure I remind every one of you of our younger siblings, who also used to be troublemakers but later grew up to become great people." She said, No, that's not what I mean. You are not like my siblings, you just remind me of them. I wish they were half as nice as he is. My sister is the most villainous there could be, and my brother is a serial killer. Sorry to disappoint you, but they are nothing like you." The Nero asked, "What?" Adele Dunn said, "Would you like to know what happened to them? Are they alive or not?" Adele pointed ahead with her finger and said, "If you want to know what happened to them, go stand in that line over there. Nero replied, "Hey, you can't tell me what to do." Adelie leaned on Nero and said, "Get in that line if you want to live." The Nero dashed. And Adelie grinned and said, "What a naive little boy. He reminds me of my little brother when I saw him for the first time." She looked up at the sky and said, "I wonder what he's been up to lately." Under the blue sky, there are green trees and mountains, and smashing is happening. There is an illusion happening, a beam is occurring, a swoosh is happening, and people are standing. There, a slam occurs, and the boy leans. And there is a slashing action happening there. Caden flaps and says to the boy, "I move, I can't see." The boy standing behind says, "Oh." The boy standing behind says, "But debris could come flying your way." Caden says, "I need to keep a close watch to make sure the job is being done properly." And there is a smashing of stones there. Caden has a scratch on his face, and he wipes his face with his hand. Very nice. There is a crumble happening there. The boy said his lordship is expected to pass through here tomorrow, but what will he think when he sees that the bridge has collapsed? Caden replies, "Did I ask for your opinion?" He extends his hand forward, and the boy responds, "Oh, here you are, sir." He raises a letter in his hand, and Caden picks it up, saying, "What? There is a red stamp on that letter." Caden said, "Another scroll with the Yuden seal? It can't be Adele. She never uses this seal." Caden crumpled the letter and said, "Why is she not replying?" The boy said, "Pardon?" Caden said, "This is already the third time I have received a reply from someone other than Adele. I wondered if something happened to her." The boy said, "I doubt it. I am sure everything's fine since Master Jerox has not mentioned anything in particular. If something ever happened to Lady Adelie, Master Caden would surely be the first one to know." We all remember how furious Master Caden was the last time Lady Adelie was late to reply, so we know not to let that happen again. The boys said she's probably just busy filling in for Lord Sergio. Caden turned and said no matter how busy she is, she would have at least written me a short reply. She knows what I am like. You think Lady Addie will inherit the family business after his lordship returns? Of course, you know she's dead set on being the heir. The boy said, does not his lordship know no woman is suitable for that kind of position? Caden replied, this Caden would be a better fit. Caden lunged and said she may be smart, but she's only a woman. Caden grabbed the boy, and he said, Ack? Master Caden, please don't kill me. The boy choked and said, why should I not? Caden grasped his neck, and the boy said, I am sorry. Caden said, I am not the one you should be apologizing to. Caden said, you deserve to have your tongue sliced off. The boy gasped, Master. The boy coughed. Lady Adele took each of our names down before sending us hurry. Adele twitched her eyes. That means she does not want me to kill any of them. A boy is lying on the ground, and as he performs a Caden stomp, he write her a letter saying I am a heated back. The boy said, what? But Lady Adelie asked us to make sure the job gets done properly. Caden replied, there is no need for that. Given how meticulous she is, there is no way she would have put so much trust in me. I can't believe I just figured this out. How foolish of me. Caden was sitting injured. She knows I am coming. Will she really be okay here? I don't know if Sister Agnes can handle a place like this. Killian said to Michael, do you think they sent her to the kitchen because they thought she could handle it? The boy replied, well, no, but... Kylan said, they are just children. Michael said they are not our little angels. Many of them were kicked out of other training facilities before finally landing here as our last resort. Michael said, you could say they are little devils. Killian turned toward Michael and said, Michael, why did you wait until now to tell me this? Killian, glance. The Colonel and Michael walked step by step and leaned. The Colonel said, are the children that bad? Michael said most of them are manageable, but one kid in particular is the most real monster. Colonel replied, oh, you mean that boy named Nero? I have heard stories about him. He is Marquis Likia's only son. I think things started going south after he failed to live up to the high expectations everyone had for him. It's unfortunate, but I don't think there's much we can do for him here. Colonel walked and stepped, and Colonel said, and Sister Agnes was put in charge of him. She is going to reset the temple for that. Michael replied, she seemed fine. Kellyanne flinched, but she did ask if it was the commander who had her sent there. She must think he really hates her. Yeah, I can't blame her for that. Don't you two have better things to do? Michael and Colonel were flinched. Michael and Killian walked and stepped. Michael said to Killian, my apologies, Commander. What I meant was... Whoa! There was a scramble, and a man standing in front shouted loudly, Commander! The man ran up to Kylan and said, oh, I did not know you could be coming today. Michael said, what's going on here? Well, Sister Agnes suggested that the children come watch the Knight's train. Kellyanne glanced. Adele smiled. This is no place for children. The Knights risk getting distracted. I am sorry. There was chatter and babble between the children. Tell her I won't be possible. Adele smiled and said, ha ha, you little brats. Michael said, I will try to set another time for them too. Kellyanne replied, no, that won't be necessary. I don't mind, just let them stay here. Michael said, no, that's unacceptable. I will send them back right away. Kellyanne said, Michael, I said I don't mind. Some kids were standing in the temple. A boy laughed and said, calm down, kids, the cries won't be able to focus if it's too loud. A girl said, but we are not even doing anything. A boy shouted, we are not loud. Adele was standing and watching all this. A boy said, the Knights are in charge of protecting this temple, so you have to be nice to them, not to mention you might anger the sun if you are too loud. Adele said, Your Grace. She was shining and dazzling. She said, would you allow me to have a word with them? The boy said, "Oh, would you do that for me? In that case, I will go greet the commander." Adele smiled. The boy walked, stepped, and said, "I did not expect him to show up with all these children here." Kallian was standing and watching all this. Adele said, "Why is he looking at me like that?" Agans, the kids said to Adele, "Is it true the sun god will get mad if we are too loud?" "No, Lord Ennis would not get mad at you for that." The boy kid said, "Right, that's what I thought. But your moms will." The kids were stunned. Adele leaned on the kid and said, "Here, allow me to explain why you have to be quiet." The kid said, "Agenis, it's so wonderful to see the children behave themselves like that." The kids are sitting quietly. Adele laughed and said, "They are the Empire's future after all." The boy replied, "I wonder what's gotten into them all of a sudden." Adele said, "I just remind them how their mothers would want them to behave. That's all." The boy laughed and said, "You are so good with children. I am very impressed." Adele said, "I have 2 younger siblings myself, you see." He replied, "I bet they are just as wonderful as you are." Adele smiled and said, "Of course. In fact, one of them grew up to be the most notorious serial killer in the Southern Territories." "Oh, you wanted to watch the night train, did you not?" Adele said to the kids. The kids trembled, and a kid replied, "We did." Adele said, "Of course, if you want to make your mothers proud." The kids dashed and said, "Ah." The boy bowed. "It's daytime, the greenery is vibrant, and the sun is shining." "It seems you have something to tell me," Nero replied. "Who the heck are you?" Adele said, "You had better start addressing me with respect. I am warning you." Then Nero shouted, "What if I don't?" Adele glowed and shimmered and then said, "Oh, I will just grab your hand and pray with you in front of everyone here, including the knights and all your friends." Nero said seriously, "Who are you? How should I answer him? He does not even show any respect towards the priestess, so if I tell him I am only the volunteer, he is just going to look down on me even more." "You see," Adele said, "I am a humble servant of Ennis," the Nero replied. "What does that even mean?" "I am very valuable to this temple." Adele said, "I do things such as preparing meals for the knights, washing the dishes, harvesting medicinal herbs, and even helping out with children like you and other squires." The kid said, "Oh, so you are a housekeeper." The Killian flinched, and Adele said, "Should I just spank him?" The Nero shouted and said, "I can't believe I have been letting a merry housekeeper order me around all this time." Adele replied, "Hey, watch your mouth," she said. "Have you ever even done a single chore in your life? Housekeepers are at least useful, unlike you." Nero replied, "Why would I ever do something myself that I can pay others to do for me? I was told I did not need to worry about anything as long as I had money." Adele glanced. "I hope he is not hearing this." Adele grabbed the child by the arm, and she said, "You are right. Money can solve anything. There's nothing in the world that money can't buy or do for you. I am just being honest with you." Nero said, "So what's the problem then? Do you really think you deserve any money though? All you ever do is complain and look down on other people." Adele said, "Do you think behaving that way will earn you a lot of money? Money is earned. You have to show that you deserve it." Nero startled, and then he clenched. Nero said, "Who cares? It's not like I can become a knight anyway." Adelie said sarcastically, "Huh?" The boy came in anger and said, "So what if I work hard? I can never become a knight like everyone else here. My father always said I was a good-for-nothing destined to become a drunkard and dishonor the family." Adele replied, "Your father said that to you? Wow, that's some awful pretending right there. It's one thing to spoil children, but to verbally abuse them is unacceptable." Adele said, "Why do you think your father said that to you, Nero?" Nero replied, "Because it's true. And my father never lies." Adele said, "You really look up to him, don't you? Why does he side with his father? This is heart-wrenching." "But no, I don't," Nero said in anger. Adele replied, "Are you sure?" Nero became quiet. "That's adorable." Adele smiled and said, "I have never met your father, but I am sure he loves you very much. Why would he spend so much money on your education here?" Adele raised her finger and smiled and said, Not just anyone can enter this place, you know. The child said, but you said earlier that this place was dangerous. Adele said that was before you told me about you wanting to become a Kenite and not wanting to disappoint your father. Nero was listening quietly. And then said, still, I don't think I can become a Kenite. It's too late already. Adele said, hey Nero, do you see that man over there, the tall guy with silver hair? She was talking about Killian. Killian was glowing. I thought he was a statue. I don't blame you for that. And Adelie whispered in Nero's ear and said, to tell you the truth, when he was your age. Nero replied, asking, really? Adelie rose and said, but promise me you will keep that to yourself. He would not be happy to learn I told others about his dark past. Forgive me, my lord, Nero said, but he does not look like someone who would do that. Adelie smiled, and she said, looks can be deceiving anyway. See you later. Really, someone like him? Killian glanced. Killian walked, stepped, and said, do you have something to tell me? Nero said, were you really like me when you were younger? Killian replied, like you? I heard you used to be a real troublemaker. Is that true? Adelie is laughing, ha ha ha, and Killian frowned. Then Nero said, never mind, there is no way you were. Killian turned and became silent. If you want to know the truth. Did you hear? Nero was the first one to arrive at modding practice. A girl with golden hair said, Nero, what? That does not sound like him at all. The girl with pink hair said, it's true, his teacher was so proud of him. Oh, Sister Agnes, do you have any idea what happened to Nero? Adele is smiling and said, oh yes. Adele said, I think he might have finally accepted Lord Ennis into his life. To be honest, I don't even think Ennis himself would understand kids that age. The girl said, wow. The girl with golden hair said, may Ennis's blessing be with Nero. The pink-haired girl said, in your name we pray, Lord Ennis. Adele replied, Lord Ennis, please guide Nero's way. Fabulous. I just wing it when I don't know what their prayers are supposed to sound like, and somehow it works. Time spent at the temple 1 week. Adele halted, and Killian entered the room. Killian came silently. Adele smiled and turned and then said to the girls, may Nero continue to walk the path of righteousness. I think he saw me. Adaptation to the new environment is complete. Sister Agnes, your prayers seem to be improving by the day. At this age, I would not be surprised if you were asked to lead the prayers in place of Sister Rebecca. Oh, you flatter me. I did worse things back at home. I don't understand why I am constantly feeling on edge here. I was totally fine up until a few days ago. Adele is sitting on a sofa. Anyway, I would better return home soon. I have to go back and solve the mess I left behind before Father, Noela, and Caden caused me more trouble. I should not forget why I am here. Adele sighed and said, it was nice to spend time in such a peaceful place, but I have got a mission to accomplish. Then a sound came, it's time for prayer. Please quiet down, everyone. Adele glanced and said, where's Killian? I thought I saw him come in earlier. This is probably not the best time to see him, but it's weird not having him around for some reason. Adele turned, and Killian turned back. And Killian is standing in front of Adele, and he said, is the seat taken? Adele looked toward Killian and said, what's happening? Killian replied, I asked if I could sit down. Adele said, oh, go ahead. Killian leaned on Adele and said, thank you. Adele laughed. Ha ha ha. What's he doing here? And why now of all times? She turned and said, I don't even have anywhere else to go. Killian said, what's wrong? Adele smiled and said, oh, it's nothing. Adelie closed her eyes, joined her hands, and sat quietly. Killian said, huh? And he glanced. Put her fist on her mouth and said, ahem. The devil is among us, everyone. There she goes again. Can't she just leave me alone for once? Calm down, don't let her get to you. Lord Ennis has said the devil hides where we least expect it, often taking a beautiful and alarming form. Adele shouted and said, I accept the teachings of the Most High. Rebecca glared, and she looked at Adele. Adele said, well, how else did you expect me to react? The man I have chosen to be my husband is sitting next to me. Rabika shouted and said, and the devil's greed is never-ending. How sad is it that he is destined to fall into the abyss for going after something that is forbidden? Adele said, Lord, have mercy on this soul, on his soul. The people sitting in the temple said, Lord, have mercy on his soul. Adele said, phew. Kalyan said, pfft. Dolly thought, is he trying to stifle a laugh? She glanced, and Kalyan closed his eyes, joined her hands, and sat quietly. Adele said, you can laugh all you like. Kalyan said, make me laugh. Why would I? You thought it was funny, did you not? Even I am having a hard time holding myself back. Kalyan replied, I am surprised you said that. I thought you said you could handle anything. Adele said, did you really believe me? Kalyan said, Sister Agnes, I mean Lady Adelaide. She said, I know how much you hate me, Commander. That's why you sent me to the squire's quarters. Kalyan said, It's okay. I don't blame you for it. You don't have to give me any explanation. Kalyan said, no, I am here because… Adele turned and asked, because what? Kalyan looks toward Adele, and he said, the reason I sent you there. Sister Agnes, Adele was startled. Rabika laughed and said, it seems everyone has been praising you for your prayers, so why don't you finish the service with one? I want to see how much progress you have made too. Oh, did she hear earlier? Pardon me? Do you want me to say a prayer? Yes, please use a verse from today's scripture. It's the verse where the Lord wins over the devil and saves his poor soul. How detailed. Adele said, oh, I see. I need to think. I can't mess up after having made it this far. I know I have heard that verse before. Rebecca said, oh, come to me, you poor soul. Adele said, though I may look like the end for you. Lord, please give me the strength to remember. I beg you. Adele closed her eyes and joined her hands and said sweetly, should you repent? Adele blinked and said, should you repent? Kalyan clenched. Adele turned and said, come on, what's next? Kalyan replied, you too. Kalyan is sitting by joining his hands. Adele said, you too. Kalyan said, shall be loved? Commander, you received a letter from His Excellency. I see. Michael said His Majesty seems to be recovering from his illness. Kalyan is sitting on a chair with some items placed in front of him. He is writing something on a paper with a pen and says, oh, is that so? Are you not going to read it? Kalyan is holding an envelope in his hand. And he opens the envelope and reads it. When is he expected to return? In 2 days. Michael said. Is he disappointed? Kalyan said that ever since he was forced to fill in for the Archbishop during his absence, he had been anxiously awaiting his return. Michael is standing near Kalyan, buzzing and staring at him. Kids are playing in the ground. It's good to see those kids behaving for once, although I know that's not going to last long. Boys will be boys after all. Kalyan said, I am sure they will be sad to see Sister Agnes leave. Kalyan flinched, and Michael said, is she leaving? Kalyan replied, pardon? She was only planning to volunteer for a short while. She's just waiting for His Excellency to come back, remember? Why? Michael laughed and said, how should I know? Did I do something wrong? Kalyan sat down, placing his hand on his head. He said I knew who she was waiting for, and why she was staying here to begin with. So why am I feeling this way? Kalyan falls into deep thought about what Adelaide had said to him. Once His Excellency returns, I am going to be honest with him about me searching for a husband. I am sure there will be at least one knight here willing to marry me, don't you think? No, everyone is like you, Commander. Michael replied, Leonard sure is working hard lately. He is at it again today too. Kalyan looked toward Michael and said, what do you mean, Leonard is working hard? Michael turned and said, you know how much he hates working with children. He probably just wants Lady Adelaide to notice him. Michael was saying all this with his eyes closed. Then he saw that the chair in that place was empty, and he began to say, Commander, it's daytime, and a lush green tree stands. Adele stood in the temple ground and said, stay focused, you little brats. This next part is really important. Wow, they are so cute. By the way, why won't you tell me, Nero? Nero said he won't even look at me. What do you want? Adele replied, I am just curious to know why you have decided to train so hard all of a sudden. Only a couple of days ago, you were crying to me, saying you did not have it in you to become a knight. Nero turned toward Adele and said, I did not cry, I just... Adele grinned and blushed, and Nero said, got you. What would you know? You are just a housekeeper. Adele laughed and said, hey, what did I say about being disrespectful? Nero replied, but it's true. Adele said, what makes you think I would not know? Nero said, because you are different from the commander and me. Adele said, what do you mean? Nero walked step by step and said I did not have time to explain. Adele looked toward Nero and said, what's gotten into him? The colonel walks step by step towards Adelie and says, is something wrong? Adelie replied, oh, Sir Leonard, it's nothing. Did you also start training when you were that young? Colonel replied, yes, all my brothers work nights, so I did not have much of a choice. He smiled and said, there are people like the commander who are naturally gifted, but for most people it's best to start young. Adelie said, the commander? This is my chance. Leonard is the most talkative person here. I am sure I can get some information on Killian from him. Adelie placed her fingers on her mouth and said, oh my, I thought he would have started training very young too. Colonel laughed and said, oh come on, you can't compare him to the rest of us. Adelie smiled and said, I mean, he is only human, is he not? I don't enjoy gossiping like this, but this is the best chance I will get. Adelie laughed, haha. Colonel replied, would you believe it if I told you the commander has only been with us for 4 years? Adelie was shocked and said, no way. Colonel replied, His Excellency brought him here after the commander saved him from the great fire. Everyone was against it. It just did not seem fair that he did not have to go through all the years of training we went through. Oh, I see. It sounds like even Leonard was upset. He has only been here for 4 years, and of those 4, he spent a few inside the Kellehen ice cave. Adelie said, and she is lost in thought. For someone to rise to the position of commander in such a short time. Could it be he slayed the red dragon? Adele thought, no, I can't be even for someone like him. Dragons were believed to have gone extinct many centuries ago. Therefore, no one believed it when a rumor spread a few years ago about a cursed red dragon setting fire to everything around San Fidelo. People thought it was a made-up story to raise funds for the temple. Jackie is brushing Adele's hair, and Jackie said, what? Adele replied, a dragon? Give me a break. Adele is reading a paper. Considering he did not have any experience, Killian must have done something extraordinary to become a commander at such a young age. Not to mention he must have received the approval of both the archbishop and the head nun in order to rise to his current position. He must have done something truly heroic in order to earn such recognition. Adele puts her fist on her mouth and said this was all around the same time as the Red Dragon story too. But still, this is all too hard to believe if the Red Dragon really did exist. Adele said someone would have already made money from it. Its horn and claws would sell for a fortune. Colonel said while laughing, what are you talking about? Adele replied, oh, it's nothing. Colonel said anyway, like I was saying, the commander is amazingly gifted. Upon returning from the ice cave, he went straight to the great battle of Thailand. You should have seen him. He was like the Grim Reaper. Adele smiled and said, I see someone who made a fortune from selling weapons to those fighting in that battle. I bet you fought courageously too, Sir Leonard. Oh haha, well. Adele said, oh, could you show me how to do that thing you did earlier when you swung your sword like this? The children will love that. Colonel said, of course. Kids started making the noise and said, hey, everyone, look, Sir, Leonard is about to cut that tree over there. Wow. Colonel stood beside the tree and said, so let's pretend this tree is the enemy. You should never take off or take your eyes off of it, and you must remain calm. It's all about focus. A man comes from behind and stomps his foot forcefully. Remind yourself that only one of you will make it out of the dual life. Colonel looks back, and he said, "Commander?" Killian steps forward and says. Colonel laughed and said, "What is he doing here?" "Oh, I was just about to show these children a little demonstration." Adele stood beside the colonel. Killian glanced and said, "Is that so?" Killian played poker and became frantic and cracked and rustled and thumped. Killian said, "What kind of demonstration?" And Colonel said, "Oh." Killian said, "I wanted to make sure the demonstration was done properly. It's for the children's sake." Killian clanked. The colonel replied, "Right, I see, but you did not even give me a chance to show them what I could do." Colonel slumped and said, "I am sorry, Commander." Killian said, "Don't apologize to me. Apologize to children who thought they could learn from you." Killian glanced and said, "And?" "To the person who thought you would be up to the task and gave you a chance." He was talking about Adele. Adele said, "Is he talking about me?" Adele said, "Oh, there's no need for that." Killian replied, "Are you sure?" "Stop asking already," Killian said to Galano. "Before you try to impress anybody, I think you should start by mastering the basics." The colonel replied, "Yes, sir." There was chatter. And then, Killian and Adele looked toward the children. There was a whoosh that started, and Killian said to Adele, "You should be careful about who you request favors from." Adele said, "Are you talking to me?" Killian said, "Who else would I be talking to?" Adele said, "Huh?" Wahoosh fell there, and Adele started moving the hair away from her face. Adele said, "What did I do wrong?" Killian turned toward Adele and said, "You really don't know." Adele replied, "I don't, please tell me." Killian said, "Well?" Killian stared. "He has the cat, goat, your eye, and tongue. Since you are the heirs of the hidden domain, you should have a good eye for people. Leonard is not quite suited to be teaching young children. The minds of the children are like blank canvases. You have to be careful about what you expose them to." Adele said, "I did not realize he cared so much about them. But I still don't understand why you think there was a problem with Leonard's demonstration. The children seem to be enjoying themselves. Don't forget they are not just ordinary children. It takes a great deal of effort to change one's life after being told one will amount to nothing." Adele flinched, and she said, "So you heard?" Killian turned and said, "Hear what?" "Don't play dumb with me. Anyhow, I ask that you put more thought into the decision you make from now on." Adele became upset, and she said, "Okay, but you are one of one to talk, Commander." "Why is that?" "In case you have forgotten, the only reason I am here is because of you." Adele said, "I have already told you about the disparate situation I am in. It does not matter who it is. I am thankful for any help I can get. You should have thought of that before sending me here." Killian said, "I did not think you understood." "Adelaide." Adele startled. "The reason I sent you here is because I thought it would allow me to focus on my work." Adele was listening quietly. Killian said, "I would not have assigned you to this place had I known things would turn out this way." Adele said, "What do you mean?" "This is the area under the lease to surveillance in all San Fidelo." There was a whoosh, and Killian said, "There is no such thing as an easy job. But since you did not seem like someone who had to let herself get pushed around by the children, I thought it would be a good thing for you." There was a whoosh, and Killian said, "There is no such thing as an easy job. But since you did not seem like someone who had to let herself get pushed around by the children, I thought it would be a good fit for you." There was a whoosh that started. "I knew you would not allow these unruly children to get the best of you. That's all." Killian became silent and said, "So don't think I sent you here because I dislike you." "Well then," Killian bowed in front of Adele. Adele turned back and started walking step by step. Killian also turned and began walking. The wind was blowing strongly. "I never thought I'd be saying this about a ground man," but Adele smirked. How adorably dishonest of him. There was clamor and chatter. "Come on in, everyone." Adele smiled and said to Childs, "This is where they prepared all the food you eat." One child said, "But this is it, how lame." Adele smiled and said, "Lamb, I think you need to be taught how to be more appreciated." Jackie stood beside Adele and said, "It's fine, please calm down, my lady." Adele swiped toward Jackie and said, "You think it's fine?" These children need to be taught how to be respectful human beings before they can become anything else. Now, children, there's a time and place to speak your mind. You need to choose your words carefully, but this place really is lame. How would you like it if I called you lame while you were about to become knights and you're swearing in a ceremony? Adelie said, look at all these lame knights. The empire is doomed. I want you to think about that. A deep silence fell over the place. I thought so. Adele smiled and said, how's work going, by the way? Jackie replied, everything's going well as usual. Adele put a finger on her cheek, and she was listening, and Jackie said, I am more concerned about you, my lady. I thought you said you were going to change the commander's mind no matter what. Adele replied, well, I am not going to change the commander's mind. In that moment, Adele remembered what Kalyan had said, don't think I sent you here because I dislike you. Then Adele smiled by putting her finger on her chin and said, I think I am making progress. I knew he had started opening up to me that day when he asked if he could sit down next to me. Whether he is interested in me or not, at least I know that he no longer thinks of me as someone who only cares about money. I won't be enough to convince him to get married, but at least he has softened up a little. The problem is I need to think of something to break the layers of the ice covering his heart. There was Mambert, and Adele said it's time I pour some oil over him. Jackie replied, oil, what are you talking about? Jackie said, my lady, why is your face all red? Adele looked toward Jackie, and then she replied in surprise, my face. Adele blushed and said she's right, and it's not like the oven is on or anything. I was just thinking about Killian. Jackie asked, what's wrong, my lady? Adele sat in front of Jackie and started smiling and said, oh, nothing. It's just really hot in here. Let's not forget that I am not the protagonist here. The only thing I am entitled to in this world is an enormous amount of money, not romance. Adele turned and said, well, what do you think about this place, Nero? Nero said, it sucks. There's nothing but potatoes here. Nero kicked the potatoes and said they should really feed us better if they expect us to train hard. Adele looked toward him and said, you want, but I agree with you. Now that I think of it, something does not feel right. Our family has never been stingy when it came to sending funds to the San Fidelo temple. Jackie said, it does seem a little odd, my lady. Even the servants at our mansion are fed better than this. Adele grabbed the Nero. Adele said to Jackie, Sister Rebecca is the one in charge of the pantry, right, Jacqueline? Jackie replied to Adele, yes, I think she is in the back receiving today's food shipment as we speak. The Nero huffed with a hot breath and said, I have never met anyone as scary as her. Adele turned and said, let's go see her. I need to have a word with Sister Rebecca. Jackie replied, now, but I am supposed to wash and prepare the wheat for milling. Adele said, what? It seems Sister Rebecca won't give her a break. Jackie replied, I am just going to stay here, my lady. I am too scared of her. Adele leaned on Jackie and said, is she scarier than me? Jackie replied, no. Then Adele said, but don't worry. They will take care of the job for you. Jackie asked, who's they? Who do you think? And the little birdies. The children grabbed and rushed. They said, she said, it would help us with our swordsmanship. Apparently, it's some kind of training drill. The commander is going to be so happy. On the starry night, they walked by steps in the temple. Jackie came towards Adelie and said, wait, my lady, I heard that His Excellency is expected to arrive tomorrow. Don't you have more important matters to attend to? Adelie replied, this is one of them. Maybe I should just go alone. But are you sure? Adelie beamed and said, it's time to go stir up some trouble. Adele whispered in Jacqueline's ear. She said, here's what I want to do. On a dark, starry night, Rebecca stood in the temple's garden, praying and saying, everything will finally go back to normal tomorrow. Thank you, Lord. I can't wait to see that woman be told off by His Excellency, and burst into tears. Then Adele came and said, Sister Rebecca. Rebecca replied, oh, Sister Agnes. Adele shimmered slightly and spoke with a glow, that's never going to happen. I need to ask you something. Adele said about the pantry, I expect the San Fidelio temple to have a better food supply considering all the generous funding it receives. Rebecca replied, "What are you? Do you have a problem with our food?" All the ingredients used in the kitchen seemed to be of far lesser quality than average. I am sure you are aware of this yourself, since you come from a prestigious family. Rebecca said, "I don't think you know what you are talking about, Sister Agnes. We spend more than 50,000 rubles every week to be supplied with the highest quality food." Adele glared and said, 50,000 rubles every week. Adele said to Rebecca, "You have been paying all that money for that junk." Rebecca replied, "You could not find food of higher quality anywhere else, yet it seems even that is not up to your standard, Sister's hygienist." Adele said, "You would be right if that food was actually worth 50,000 rubles. Rebecca started and said, "What are you saying? Are you accusing me of lying right now?" Rebecca greeted and said, "How dare you? You had better take that back." Adele said, "I am not excusing anyone of anything for now, but I must get to the bottom of this." Adele turned and Rebecca said, "What do you plan to do?" Adele said, "If this has nothing to do with you, then someone else must be behind it." Someone arrived there on a horse cart, the sound of clip-clop echoing in the air. A man came, sighed, and said, "I am offended, Sister Rebecca. How could I ever think of messing with the food destined for this sacred temple?" Rebecca replied, "That's not what I meant. I just wanted to see if," the man said, "I admit that it's hard to avoid any damages during transit since the temple is located so far away in the mountains, but that does not change the fact that this is all food of the highest quality. Please feel free to check for yourself." How could she ever tell? "You said it yourself that the food here was similar to the food you used to have before coming to this temple." Rebecca said, "I did, but then I would like you to retract your accusations. You must understand I barely even make a profit considering how hard it is to transport food all the way here." Adele said, "Ask them, is that true?" The man replied, "Of course. Who is that? I have never seen her before." Adele stepped toward him and said, "And who might you be? Is it not rude to ask somebody that without introducing yourself first?" He replied, "I am Kurl from the Theros domain. As you may know already, it's the most well-known domain in the East." There was mumbling, and Adele said, "Wow, the East has really hit rock bottom." Adele pulled a cloth and said, "Pardon me?" "Oh, it's nothing. Thank you for introducing yourself." And then she swooshed the cloth. Kurl laughed, "Haha, it seems you have a great interest in produce. The food you see here is some of the freshest and rarest there is. The mushrooms you are looking at alone are worth. They are all rotten." Adele put the mushroom in her hand, and the Kurl said, "What did you just say?" Adele replied, "Allow me to answer your previous question first." He said, "My previous question," and then Adele swished and said, "Let me introduce myself." The man said in anger, "Those eyes, could it be?" Adele said, "Did you figure out who I am? That will save us some time. What's a lady of the Sergio family doing out here?" Adele said, "That's none of your business." Kurl said, "Excuse me, my lady, I am just a little confused." Adele said, by putting the mushroom in her hand, she said, "Not as much as I am, I bet. You call this food of the highest quality." She squeezed the mushroom in her hand and said, "Had I known the most highly reputed domain, the East, was corrupt like this, I would have crushed it a long, long time ago." She dropped the mushroom from her hand. Kurl said, "That's very rude of you. Just because you are from the great Sergio family, that does not mean you have the right to sabotage our goods." Adele gripped the basket and said, "Why is everyone so insistent on bringing our family down?" She pushed the mushroom basket down, and there was a tumble. Thus, Kurl said, "What was that for?" Adele smiled and said, "At least our family does not sell trash." Rebecca dashed and said, "Sister Agnes, what are you?" Adele said, "Please stay back." She grabbed the basket and said, "There is no need for you to dirty your hands with this. It appears you hastily defrosted last year's frozen leftovers. Even if all the spices are powdered, I wonder where you got these from. There was scattered. The wheat is 4 to 5 years old, at the very least." There was a crash, and a man shouted. Adele said, "If these ingredients spoiled on the way to this mountaintop as you claim, There probably was no need to come up to this road that my family laid in particular. Adele was frigid and said it would have all rotated anyway. Am I wrong? We have been providing ice and access to roads from the east into the south, free or charged from merchants. That's something we have done for the good of the public, not for an ingrate like you to take advantage of. That's something we have done for the good of the public, not for an ingrate like you to take advantage of. Kirill flinched and said, Lady Adelie? Adelie replied, disturbing this type of trash is completely up to your description, but it won't be allowed to enter my territory. Unfortunately for you, I don't discard petty cash like my father. Kirill said, but she inspected everything herself. She should have mentioned it on the spot if something was wrong. Rebecca was shocked and said, You can't blame me for all of this. Rebecca said, in front of Adelie, Adele said if you think our domain is the only party at fault, I would like to officially raise a complaint with the sister Rebecca as well. Kirill said, in my case, it's as simple as halting business with the temple, but as for you, you are going to be held responsible for this matter. I think it's best if we just talked it out, wouldn't you agree? We have never had problems before. Why? Adele crushed the mushrooms. I can't believe what a terrible person you are. Adele said in anger, Don't assume that all nobles are well off. You just happened to find out what kind of person Sister Rebecca was and decided to take advantage of her. The carol shouted and said it's not my fault that she fell for it. She should have known how to sort the good from the bad. Adele smirked and said, Who's the fool here? Huh! You just dug your own grave. It's a pity that you failed to realize the kind of person she really is. Carol said, Pardon is not the... She's just a nun. Just a nun? This person you are looking down on is someone with the God-given power of cursing people who do wrong. Rebecca fell silent. Why are you not being serious? Carol said, How could she have that kind of power but not be able to check for ingredient quality? Adele said, Do you know and understand why San Federico accepted such a person? She may be lacking in other areas, but her holy power is not to be underestimated. Adele said, Sister Rebecca, please do not forgive these heinous beings who decided to hurt you and Lord Ennis. Rebecca clenched her hand and said, Go on now, I know this is your forte, YH. Kirill laughed and said, Sister Rebecca, tell me this is not true. She is making it up, is she not? Rebecca rose and said, Such an honorable person like you would never do such a thing. Kirill mumbled and flinched, and he said, Dear Ennis, ruler of the heaven and earth's evil energy. Rebecca replied, A man who insulted your honorable servant stands before me. May your divine wrath pour down upon him. I will be sure to bring only the best ingredients next time, and I will continue to do so going forward. Please believe me. Carol dropped down in front of Rebecca and Adelie and then said, I beg for mercy next time. Adelie replied, is a phrase used by the victim extending forgiveness, not something that an assailant uses for a pledge. Anyway, I want you to donate every single ruble that you have embezzled in the name of San Fedelo and bring fresh ingredients in time for our breakfast tomorrow. 1,000 rubles should be sufficient for producing what we need. Carol slumped and said, Yes, but I don't have 1,000 rubles on me. Use this, you will pay me back later. Carol fell down with a thud. Rebecca said to Adelie, Sister Agnes, did you not say that you sent all your possessions back to your home? Where did this come from? Adelie laughed and said, Well, I knew you were not going to leave me if I did. Kirill held an envelope in his hand and placed his other hand behind his head and said, I'm sorry to interrupt, but even if I supply the ingredient again, you would not be able to notice it if it's too different from before. Adele said, What's the problem with that? You can just say that you have become a devotee follower. Kirill sat down in front of Adele and said, Pardon, but it's not that kind of sudden. Sister Rebecca is probably the only person I come into contact with here at the temple. Rebecca said so, what about her? Adele replied she is the strictest person in the temple and works harder than anyone to adhere to the word of Ennis. Carol laughed and said, Yes, ma'am, in any case, deceiving people is your specialty, so figure it out yourself. She had some tears of joy, or said some prayers, I don't care. He went away on a bullock cart, making a clip-clop sound. Adele turned and said, "Shall we go back? Everyone will start wondering where we are if we stay out here too long." Sister Rebecca, she looked towards Rebecca. And Rebecca replied, "You are greatly mistaken if you think that you have won me over." Adele looks towards Rebecca. "I know this may seem childish, but that cunning woman would never help me out if she did not gain anything from it. If in any way you are thinking that I have taken your side, you have directly misunderstood Sister Rebecca." Adele said, "The reason why I stepped in to help is because I know that you are devoted to what you do. It would be a loss to San Fidelo if someone like you were to be dismissed." Rebecca looks back toward Adele. Rebecca said, "Sister Agnes, how do you?" Adele grinned and replied, "It is not too difficult for one hard worker to recognize another." Adele said, "Besides these, there's no particular reason for me to try and win you over. Everyone else already opened up to me, so why would I need to?" A man approaches with step-step sounds and says, "Sister Agnes," and swished happens there, and the man falls silent. What in the world is going on here? There was something strange. Adele was sitting at the dining table, food was laid out on the table, and the colonel was sitting opposite her. Adele said, "Who knows? I suppose the merchant has welcomed Enes into his heart at least," Colonel replied. "What, out of the blue?" Adele smiled and said it was likely thanks to Sister Rebecca's constant prayers, since she's always lived according to Enes's divine will. After meeting someone as devoted as Sister Rebecca so many times, something must have clicked for him. Colonel and Michael were surprised. Michael said, "Wow." And Colonel said, "Incredible." Adele is eating, and Rebecca sits beside Adele, and she looks at Adele and falls silent. "I need to come to my senses. She will be leaving today anyway." Rebecca stands and says, "Please excuse me." Michael entered by walking step by step. Michael said to Kellyan, "Commander, do you have a minute?" Kellyan replied, "Not now. It's regarding Lady Adelaide." Kellyan flinched, and he whooped. Michael replied, "If I feel you should be aware of this."